Chapter 176. Hearing Kong Nanhua mention the heavenly flower nine-heart lotus, Lin Feng became spirited. Oh? What's that place? The heavenly flower nine-heart lotus in the exchange system was too expensive. Even if Lin Feng went bankrupt, he wouldn't be able to exchange for a single lotus seed. Kong Nanhua replied, "To the north of Kunlun Mountain is an endless desert. There's a plain at the intersection of the desert and Kunlun Mountain. It belongs to the westernmost territory of the Great Qin dynasty. It's called the Sand Continent. The Sand Continent is the territory of the Great Qin dynasty, but in reality, it's a power called the Heavenly Trade Pavilion that controls it. This power is extremely mysterious and low-key. It never gets involved in the conflicts between the powers in the Divine Land. However, it's in charge of the trade of cultivation resources that connects the east and west of the continent. Every year on the 9th of October, the Heavenly Trade Pavilion will hold the vast Ocean Dharma Assembly in the Sand Continent. Cultivators who participate in the assembly can trade all kinds of cultivation resources. Cultivators from all over the world will participate." Kong Nanhua recalled and said, "I've participated in it once. It was indeed very grand and lively. There were countless rare treasures of all kinds. I've been staying in the Great Lake of the ancient region for a period of time. However, I've heard from an old friend that the heavenly flower nine-heart lotus has appeared twice in the past 3 years. Moreover, it was the same person who took it out to trade." Lin Feng asked, "Do you know where that person came from?" Kong Nanhua shook her head regretfully. "I don't know about that. However, it's said that that person has always been looking for something in the assembly. He hasn't been able to find anything, so he should still be participating in the assembly this time." Lin Feng nodded and took note of this vast Ocean Dharma Assembly. According to the geographical division given by the system, the Sand Continent where the vast Ocean Dharma Assembly was held was also a part of the northern foothills of Kunlun Mountain. If he could make a name for himself in this assembly, it would definitely help to raise his reputation in the northern foothills of Kunlun Mountain. If he handled it well, he wouldn't need to fight to the death with others to accumulate a large amount of reputation. The Sand Continent could be said to be the most densely populated place in the northern foothills of Kunlun Mountain. It was unlike the depths of Kunlun Mountain, which was full of dangerous peaks and sparsely populated. It would also be easier for him to recruit disciples if he created a commotion here. Lin Feng even had the idea of recruiting disciples in the Sand Continent and then bringing them to Yujing Mountain. After all, Lingyun Peak where Yujing Mountain was located in the depths of the Kunlun Mountain range. For mortals, it was very difficult to find this place, but there were pros and cons to this. Accepting disciples in the Sand Continent would make it easier for Pang Jie and the rest to create trouble for him. As for the specific arrangements, he had to think about it carefully. However, I definitely have to participate in the vast ocean spell assembly and increase my reputation. At the same time, I can solve the problem of those brats' cultivation." Lin Feng glanced at Xiao Budian and the other three, and lamented in his heart, "This time, I really became a father and a mother." Speaking of being a father and a mother, Lin Feng thought of the children he had brought back and felt another headache. He waved his hand and called Zhu Yi over. "Little Yi, I'll leave these children to you. Teach them the rules. As for where they live," Lin Feng clapped his hands lightly, and purple gas descended from the sky, turning into houses. Although it was illusory, when the houses made of purple gas came into contact with Yujing Mountain, they seemed to have gained support and a foundation, standing firmly on the mountain peak. In terms of food and clothing, Lin Feng flicked his finger, and balls of purple gas landed on the bodies of the 20 children, turning into suits of luxurious purple clothes. Each piece seemed to be specially designed, and the size was just right. Lin Feng released the thousands of spirit herb seedlings he had obtained from the 100 Herb sect, and then gave Xiao Yan a look. Xiao Yan smiled and blew a loud whistle, and the lucky child flew out of the mysterious sky-time cave. After Xiao Yan fed it some nether evil flame, the lucky child was satisfied and let out a cheer. It landed on the ground and turned into a piece of spirit soil. Lin Feng waved his hand, and the spirit herb seedlings landed on the lucky spirit soil. In the blink of an eye, they matured, and each of them formed a spirit monster, like a group of fat children running around. This is called the spirit potato, and this flower is called the purple lie flower. This is the spirit fruit of fasting, and this is the immortal fruit. Lin Feng was very familiar with all the plants that could be used as food for cultivators. There was no need to refine them into medicinal ingredients, and they could be eaten with a simple treatment. It was even fine to swallow them directly. The spirit energy was abundant and it was soft and soft. Mortals without cultivation could also eat them, but most of the spirit energy would be wasted. Xiao Budian took the lead and threw a purple fruit into his mouth. After chewing twice, he smacked his lips and said with a smile, "The taste is not bad." The children curiously looked at the strange and dazzling scene in front of them, and some of them dared to come forward. Xiao Yan smiled when he saw them, and picked some fruits that were suitable for them to eat, and distributed them to the children. The group of children ate happily in a short while. Zhu Yi looked at them and asked Lin Feng, "Master, they are..." Lin Feng introduced the origins of these children, and then said, "They are all children with poor lives, and they don't even remember where their homes are. Master will first settle them down on the mountain. Once they are successful in their cultivation and become sentient, they will be able to remember what happened when they were young. Then, it will be up to them to decide whether to stay or go. Before that, they will be the children of the sect, and you will teach them some rules." Zhu Yi nodded. "Master is merciful, disciple will definitely take care of it." At this time, Tian Qihua had already turned back into his human form, and he flew back to Xiao Yan's side. Yujing Mountain was originally rich in spirit energy, and it was suitable for the growth of all kinds of spirit herbs and medicines. This piece of land had been continuously ripened by Tian Qihua, and its quality had become even higher. Even though Tian Qihua had turned back into his human form, the medicine field had gradually grown to a large scale. Lin Feng communicated with Yujing Mountain through his mind, and he used his divine ability, and said to himself, "Rise." The rocks on top of Yujing Mountain surrounded the medicine field, and they gradually rose up, turning into a small valley. In the center of the valley, all kinds of spirit herbs and medicines were thriving in the medicine field. "Why do I feel like something is missing? Forget it, let's not think about it for now." Lin Feng irresponsibly called Xiao Yan over. "Xiao Yan, this will be the sect's medicine field from now on. I'll leave it to you to manage for now." "Why?" Xiao Yan's face instantly turned bitter, but he saw Lin Feng looking at the lucky doll that was pestering him with a smile that was not a smile. This time, Xiao Yan immediately became discouraged, and he took over the task dejectedly. However, his nightmare was not over yet. He heard Lin Feng say with a smile, "Right now, this medicine field is still missing some essential things. Find them and then deal with them. This can also be considered a test from Master." "Yes, Master." Hearing this, Xiao Yan became even more depressed, and he stared at the medicine field in front of him with a bitter expression. After dealing with these trivial matters, Lin Feng announced that they were temporarily dismissed. Zhu Yi led a group of children to settle down, and the little one also followed. Since leaving Stone Village, this was the first time he had met so many people of the same age. Xiao Yan stared at the medicine field in a daze. After reporting to Lin Feng, Wang Lin returned to the mysterious Sky-Time cave to continue cultivating. Yu Hongyan found a secluded place on top of Yujing Mountain to cultivate on his own, as if he did not want to waste even a moment. Kong Nanhua also found a place on top of the mountain to cultivate. Lin Feng originally wanted to invite him into the mysterious Sky-Time cave to save time for cultivation, but after careful consideration, he gave up on this idea. This kind of paradise that could accelerate the flow of time was really the foundation of the sect. Although the spiritual energy in the paradise was abundant and constantly regenerated, it was ultimately limited and could not accommodate too many people to enter and cultivate at the same time. Although the number of people in the sect was small, there would eventually be a day when the branches would flourish, so it was better to establish rules first. Things like rules had always been easy to break, but difficult to abide by. Lin Feng decided that the mysterious Sky-Time Cave, other than himself and personal disciples like Xiao Yan who could freely enter and exit, it was better to be a kind of reward for guardian elders like Kong Nanhua, as well as the second and third generation disciples who would enter the sect in the future. This was also conducive to establishing the reward and punishment mechanism of the sect and a healthy competitive environment, so as to enhance the motivation of the latecomers to work hard. Kong Nanhua obviously knew this, so although he already knew about the existence and wonderful use of the mysterious Sky-Time Cave, he did not mention it, so as not to make things difficult for Lin Feng. After bidding farewell to Kong Nanhua, Lin Feng did not return to the mysterious Sky-Time Cave, but his consciousness re-entered the system. Lin Feng had never forgotten about the lottery chance that Kong Nanhua had been rewarded for becoming a guardian of the sect. However, this choice made him a little conflicted. Should he use the lottery system to gamble on the Heaven Flower 9-Heart Lotus? After careful consideration, Lin Feng did not use the lottery system to gamble on the Heaven Flower 9-Heart Lotus in the end. On one hand, he was not sure about the probability of the lottery, and on the other hand, he did not have any particularly suitable low-priced items on hand. If I don't gain anything after the vast Sea Dharma assembly, I'll fight for another lottery chance to draw lots, Lin Feng thought as he clicked on the roulette system. With a flash of light, the items waiting for the lottery appeared in front of Lin Feng. Lin Feng's gaze swept across, and immediately fell on the Disciples' Abode construction token. The Disciples' Abode was where the disciples of the sect lived. At the end of the day, Lin Feng's use of the cyclic purple qi to simulate a house was just a temporary measure. If outsiders saw it, they would be a little timid. Although Lin Feng could also excavate a cave on Jade Capital Mountain, and the spirit qi there was probably even more abundant, it would be a little boring for all the disciples to live in a cave. This Disciples' Abode construction token could solve this problem, and according to the description, the Disciples' Abode was the only token that could expand. In other words, for the first construction, there was no need to build too many houses, just enough for the current disciples to live in. In the future, when there were more disciples, the token could activate the expansion function, and the number of disciples' residences could be continuously increased, and the final scale could be determined according to the needs. The setting was rather considerate and user-friendly. Since the mountain was about to be opened, Lin Feng had an urgent need for the construction token. After staring at the numbers on the roulette and calculating for a moment, Lin Feng decisively issued an order for the roulette to start spinning. The Disciples' Abode construction token was in the 14th grid. After some calculations, Lin Feng finally decided to start spinning from the 3rd grid. The roulette system that looked like a light wheel started spinning rapidly. Lin Feng stared at the light wheel nervously and counted in his heart, 1 revolution, 2 revolutions, 3 revolutions. Chapter 177. 3 rounds passed quickly, and so did half a round. After the roulette moved forward another 2 squares, it stopped swaying and finally stopped spinning. I did it! A smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. Looking at the sect-building token in his hand, he felt elated. His speculation was indeed correct. The roulette system's pattern was that, after 3.5 revolutions, it would stop at the 1st to 4th grid. Although he had obtained the Disciple Abode building token, Lin Feng was not in a hurry to use it. Right now, he only had 2 tokens, the main palace hall and the Disciples' Abode. Even if 2 skyscrapers were to rise from the ground overnight like a miracle, there would only be 2 buildings left. If someone suggested building other buildings, he would be in trouble. Lin Feng was prepared to accumulate more tokens and release them all at once. There would be no repercussions, and the impact would be at its peak. Withdrawing his consciousness from the system, Lin Feng strolled on Yujing Mountain. Silently feeling the mountain beneath his feet, the mysterious sky treasure tree above his head, and the cyclic purple qi. Time, space, matter, and spirit. These four things gradually reached a new height. I'm building a beer platform now? Every blade of grass and tree on Yujing Mountain was under Lin Feng's control. Suddenly, he found something strange. Lin Feng came to a cliff. There sat a girl dressed in red, her flame-like long hair fluttering without any wind. Yu Hongyan's eyes were slightly closed. Her sword-like red eyebrows were slightly furrowed. After setting foot on Yujing Mountain, Yu Hongyan carefully sensed the concept of power and the truth of heaven and earth. She immediately gained a lot. She was already at a bottleneck, but now she wanted to use this opportunity to break through the bottleneck and build a beer platform in her ocean of qi to advance to the mid-stage of foundation establishment. 8 in bone structure and 8 in comprehension. Not bad indeed. Lin Feng nodded slightly. After observing carefully for a while, he found that Yu Hongyan had accumulated enough dermic power. However, in terms of understanding dermic techniques, although the bottleneck had loosened, she was still a step away. At this moment, she was only a thin layer of paper away from the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. The fire elemental Tao technique that you're cultivating can obtain the divine power, the great destruction true fire. It's actually one of the 7 great true fires in the world, a branch of the Ksitigarbha true brilliance. Lin Feng said indifferently, "How ferocious is the Ksitigarbha true brilliance?" Although the Great Destruction True Fire only has 10 to 20% of its power, it is still ferocious beyond compare. As a female, your physique is in. It's not that you can't practice fire Tao techniques, but you can't follow the same path as men. Hearing Lin Feng's words, Yu Hongyan's body trembled slightly. Although he did not open his eyes, he was clearly listening attentively. Lin Feng continued, "When a woman cultivates a Taoist technique with excessive yang qi, she needs to draw out a little bit of true yang hidden in her own primordial yin. Only by using this little bit of true yang to guide the yang magic power produced by the Taoist technique can she succeed." When Yu Hongyan heard this, his body trembled violently, and his cheeks turned slightly red. Lin Feng curled his lips and acted as if he did not see anything. What he said was reasonable, but it was not pleasant to hear. When cultivating Taoist techniques, other than a few special techniques, the requirements for virgin boys and girls were actually not that strict. However, a female's physique was originally yin, so there were no restrictions for cultivating yin-type Taoist technique. However, cultivating a Taoist technique with excessive yang qi indeed needed to communicate with the true yang hidden in her primordial yin to harmonize the two energies of yin and yang. The so-called true yang in primordial yin actually meant that the practitioner must have the body of a virgin untouched. The reverse was also the same. Males who cultivated Taoist techniques with excessive yin qi also needed a little bit of true yin in their primordial yang. If they lost their virginity early and lost their virginity, it would be impossible for them to succeed in cultivating yin-type Taoist technique. At the very least, they had to build a spirit platform and condense a Tao cauldron. Only after their foundation was stable could they let loose. In the human race's cultivation world, the most famous for this was actually one of Xiao Budian's enemies, the great Qin dynasty's Yu clan. Their clan passed down a supreme Taoist technique, the mysterious underworld technique, which allowed one to cultivate one of the 6 great true waters, the mysterious underworld true water. The Yu clan and the demon race's mysterious underworld beast clan, one human and one demon, were the only 2 great powers in the heaven primal world that controlled the mysterious underworld true water. One of the top 3 ironclad rules of the Yu clan was that as long as a direct descendant of the clan cultivated the mysterious underworld technique, before they condensed a Tao cauldron in the late stage of foundation establishment, they absolutely could not get close to women. Otherwise, their cultivation would be crippled, and they would be directly kicked out of the clan. Back then, Yu Tian, who was killed by Lin Feng near Hengyu Mountain, was pitifully over 20 years old. He was born in such a large clan like the Yu clan, but he was still a virgin until he died. Yu Hongyan quickly steadied her mind and immersed herself in her own world of Taoist technique. Lin Feng slightly nudged her, and she immediately knew what to do. She was only a thin membrane away from building a spirit platform. Now that she had pierced through it, the mana within her chi-si converged, and a black and red spirit platform immediately rose from the ground. Second rank. Lin Feng frowned slightly, but he also knew that Yu Hongyan had actually used the spirit chi of Mount Yujing to surpass her usual level. It wasn't that her innate talent was bad, but the Taoist techniques she cultivated were a little inferior. If she could cultivate the Ksitigarbha True Brilliance's fire elemental Dharma treasure, the Earth Brilliance scripture, with Yu Hongyan's talent and comprehension, she actually had some hope of building a first-rank spirit platform. However, the Great Destruction True Fire technique was obviously inferior. Lin Feng thought for a moment. Forget it. A monster with a total potential of 30 can only be encountered by chance, not sought. I'll just treat it as an advance investment. He put his palms together and made a hand seal. Suddenly, a leaf floated down from the mysterious sky treasure tree. The mysterious sky treasure tree at the peak of Mount Yujing was so big that it seemed to have no end. Its crown covered the sky, and even the smallest leaf had an area of at least an acre. Lin Feng flicked his finger, and the mysterious sky treasure tree's volume kept shrinking until it was the size of a human fingernail. The shrunken mysterious sky treasure tree's leaf stuck to Yu Hongyan's forehead and merged into her glabella. Yu Hongyan's body shook violently, and the spirit platform in her chi-si, which was about to reach its peak at the 8th level, suddenly shot out spiritual energy. When Lin Feng saw this, he thought to himself, the mysterious sky treasure tree's leaf can only give you a chance. Whether you can succeed or not depends on you. A first-rank spirit platform was as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Talent, opportunities, Taoist techniques, temperament, willpower, and many other factors worked together to create it. Even if the mysterious sky treasure tree was miraculous, it could only play a supporting role and increase Yu Hongyan's chances of success. Yu Hongyan seemed to feel something, and her mind became even calmer. Silently, she guided the spiritual energy in her body and focused on building the spirit platform. Under Lin Feng's gaze, the spiritual energy at the top of Yu Hongyan's spirit platform shook continuously, and in the end, it actually turned into a layer of spirit platform completely made of flames. A first-rank spirit platform with 9 levels. This spirit platform of hers is also extraordinary. The top layer is actually completely made of flames, just like a beacon tower. Lin Feng watched from the side and clicked his tongue in wonder. The fluctuation of spiritual energy in Yu Hongyan's body gradually calmed down, becoming more condensed and pure. She had taken a big step forward and was now a mid-stage foundation-building cultivator. She opened her red eyes, which were filled with joy. After calming herself down, she slowly bowed to Lin Feng. "Thank you, Senior, for helping me." Lin Feng waved his sleeve and said with a faint smile, "I was just taking advantage of the situation. If I didn't have such talent, everything would have been in vain." Yu Hongyan raised her eyes and looked at Lin Feng with a puzzled expression. Lin Feng knew what she was thinking, but he couldn't just say, "I see that you have a good innate talent, and I want to take you as my disciple." That would be too degrading. "Your eyes are filled with hatred and anger," Lin Feng said lightly. "The fire in your heart, if it doesn't destroy the enemy, then it is destined to burn yourself. You and I meeting each other is fate. I will give you a good fortune, but whether or not you can succeed in the end is still up to you. Hearing Lin Feng's words, Yu Hongyan's mind went into a trance, blankly staring at the empty space outside of Yujing Mountain, her expression somewhat at a loss. I don't know, he's too strong, even Mr. Kong isn't his match. I desperately want to make myself stronger. I want to personally kill him and avenge everyone in the Society of the Strong Gale, but I really don't know if I can do it. Sometimes I don't even dare to think too much. Every time I think, I feel my courage weaken by a bit, I feel my confidence weaken by a bit. At this time Yu Hongyan clearly seemed a bit fragile. Her two thin sword-like eyebrows also drooped down, which instead added a bit of gentleness and beauty. Lin Feng didn't say anything, only silently listening on the side. From Yu Hongyan's narration, he finally knew the whole story of the Society of the Strong Gale's destruction. Rather than saying it's a tragedy, it's better to say it's a sad joke. The Society of the Strong Gale is a resistance organization established by the remnant citizens of Snowgale, who refused to accept the rule of the Great Zhou dynasty after the Great Zhou dynasty annexed Snowgale over 10 years ago. Its founders are two people. One is Yu Hongyan's biological brother, Yu Hongfeng, who already died in battle against the Great Zhou dynasty several years ago. And the other person is called Zhang Lai. He and Yu Hongfeng are best friends. The two of them established the Society of the Strong Gale together. After Yu Hongfeng died in battle, Zhang Lai became the leader of the Society of the Strong Gale, leading the remaining people to resist the Great Zhou dynasty. The Zhang and Yu families are old friends. Yu Hongyan grew up under Zhang Lai's tutelage. Even the Great Destruction True Fire technique that she practices right now was taught to her by Zhang Lai. During the Battle of the Great Marsh of the ancient region, Zhang Lai was in seclusion somewhere else, hoping to be able to endure the lightning tribulation and form Yuanying. Not long ago, Zhang Lai finally came out of seclusion. Not only did he reach the Yuanying stage, he even reached the middle stage of Yuanying. But in Yu Hongyan's description, after coming out of seclusion, Zhang Lai's personality became extreme and twisted, as if he had gone mad. After finding out that Yu Hongyan led the remnants of the Society of the Strong Gale out of the Great Zhou dynasty, Zhang Lai flew into a rage. He said that we are weak and compromising cowards and trash. Yu Hongyan's eyes once again ignited. I remember his original words clearly. Cowardly and incompetent, there's no use keeping you, use your flesh and blood as a sacrifice to my Snowgale country. After saying that, he actually practiced some kind of evil technique and sacrificed all of my compatriots of the Society of the Strong Gale alive. Those are all his compatriots. Yu Hongyan's eyes were spitting fire. Only him, I must kill him with my own hands and avenge everyone in the Society of the Strong Gale. Lin Feng grinned, not saying anything. Why does this sound so much like the feeling of love turning into hate? She and that Zhang Lai don't seem to be as simple as half master and disciple. Could it be the legendary teacher-student love? How did all the good cabbages get taken by pigs? No, she can use her true yang to draw out the yang mana. That means she's still immature. Oh, that's good, that means she hasn't been taken yet. Lin Feng let his imagination run wild while muttering in his heart, another good cabbages, luckily that pig is a bit stupid. But there's something wrong with that Zhang Lai. Who cares, if you don't want this disciple then, I'll kindly accept him. If he dares to come and make noise, I'll beat him up until even his mother can't recognize him. But, middle stage of Yuanying. Lin Feng smacked his lips. I need to improve my cultivation a step further. With my current strength, it's still a bit unsteady to fight one-on-one at Yuanying stage after leaving Yujing Mountain. To know Skirich, let's first start from the middle stage of Golden Elixir. Chapter 178. At the top of the Mystic Heaven Treasure Tree, Lin Feng sat upright. His body and mind were in peak condition. Let's begin. Lin Feng closed his eyes and looked inside his body. A golden elixir with a purple glow was spinning. Under Lin Feng's control, his magic power began to circulate rapidly. Vigorous mana surged within Lin Feng's body like a flood opening a dam, flowing in all directions. Then, the magic power was like firewood that was ignited. With a boom, it exploded and burned from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. It was the fire burning body, the fire tribulation. To advance to the middle stage of the golden elixir, the fire burning body was a threshold that had to be crossed. If he could pass it, he would have a bright future. If he couldn't, he would immediately be burned to ashes. Many cultivators in the early stage of the golden elixir deliberately suppressed their power so that they wouldn't accidentally trigger the fire tribulation. This was because they didn't have the confidence that they could pass it. They would rather stay in the early stage of the golden elixir and enjoy 1,000 years of life than be burned to ashes. Lin Feng was full of confidence. He initiated the fire tribulation because he believed that he had made sufficient preparations. Although the magic power in his body was surging and the fire burning body was burning, his mind was like a spring breeze. It was peaceful. Lin Feng wholeheartedly felt the changes in his body. He communicated with everything in the world. In the blink of an eye, it was like thousands of years had passed. The fire burned Lin Feng's golden elixir. The golden elixir vibrated continuously. Black smoke kept coming out from it. In the early stage of the golden elixir, although it was formed into a golden elixir, there were impurities in the golden elixir. It needed the help of the fire to remove the impurities. After a long time, Lin Feng's eyes suddenly widened and exploded with endless divine light. Boom! Between the heavens and the earth, a majestic intent connected the heavens and the earth, descending to the yellow springs and receiving the energy of the heavens and the earth. Lin Feng only felt that his body and soul were shaking together. He was reborn. It was an earth-shattering change. A golden elixir, resplendent and translucent, without the slightest impurity. An invisible qi descended from the void and connected with Lin Feng's body. Somehow, Lin Feng's mind was connected to the heavens and the earth. However, it was not like he had merged with the heavens and the earth. Instead, it was like a frog at the bottom of a well, finally realizing that there was another world beyond the well. A door that was originally tightly shut was pushed open by Lin Feng, allowing him to step into a brand new world. Middle stage of golden elixir, heaven-reaching awareness. It was only when Lin Feng was at this level that he realized how profound it was. Prior to this, cultivators had been constantly tempering their own magic power and accumulating strength. In terms of the strength of a cultivator's magic power, the difference between the middle stage of the golden elixir and the early stage of the golden elixir was not very big. However, only after reaching the middle stage of the golden elixir could a cultivator be said to be able to truly control their own magic power. The so-called cultivation was to borrow the power of the heavens and the earth to break through the limits of human, to be free, to be immortal. The early stage of the golden elixir was the realm of immortality. Although one could train their magic power to the peak, they could look inside and constantly repair the minor injuries on their body, thus obtaining immortality and breaking through the threshold of life and death. However, they were limited by their understanding of the energy of the heavens and the earth. They could not maximize their magic power that had reached the peak. But the middle stage of the golden elixir could do this after reaching the heaven-reaching awareness. This was the fundamental reason for the difference in power between the two realms. One had power, but they did not know how to use it. The other knew how to use it and could use it. This was the difference. Middle-stage golden elixir cultivators, even if they did not draw spiritual energy from the outside world, were superior to early-stage golden elixir cultivators. Directly drawing spiritual energy from the outside world would allow the power of middle-stage golden elixir cultivators to reach the next level. Lin Feng calmly gazed at the distant void. In the void, there seemed to be dots of stars flashing. He didn't know how far away it was from here, but Lin Feng could feel that in the flashing starlight there was a heart-palpitating power of heaven and earth as the stars were destroyed. That is true power. Lin Feng sighed. He stretched out his right hand and gently grasped. In the void in front of him, the water's spiritual energy mixed with other spiritual energy was directly extracted by Lin Feng. It turned into a trickling stream on his palm and quietly flowed. Lin Feng gently pointed with his left hand. All the earth's spiritual energy was extracted and turned into a clump of soil. Light. Lin Feng blew, and the light in the void suddenly became intense. Fire. Lin Feng moved his hand again, and the fire's spiritual energy was extracted and gathered together, turning into a raging fire. Generally speaking, the Tao techniques that cultivators cultivated were mostly of a single attribute. After advancing to the middle stage of golden elixir, there was usually only one type of spiritual energy that could be extracted and controlled from nature. Lin Feng's ability to create things out of nothing could be said to be unique in the golden elixir period. 8 trigrams of the great way of the heavens. Until today, I can be considered to have truly understood this Tao technique. A tranquil smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. In addition to the 2 realms void technique, the heavens stage, and the 8 trigrams sky collapsing hammer, my 4th Tao technique has finally been truly perfected. Lin Feng withdrew his magic power and came down from the mysterious sky treasure tree. He saw Kong Nanhua sitting under the tree, looking at the void in the distance. This aura. Lin Feng's eyes flashed and he smiled. It seems that you have gained a lot. Kong Nanhua turned his head and smiled. At least I didn't let Sect Master lead me to this jade capital mountain in vain. He flicked his finger, and an azure water droplet floated in midair. Lin Feng's pupils suddenly shrank. Although the water droplet was floating in midair, he could clearly feel its extraordinary weight. One of the 6 great true waters of heaven and earth, the mixed true water. The 6 great true waters each had their own unique abilities. The Blood River true water was the most filthy in the world, the Yellow Springs true water killed all things, the First Sky true water merged all things, the Xianming true water was the most cold, and the Tai Yin true water was the most gentle. On the other hand, the mixed true water was extremely heavy. Every drop of it weighed thousands of kilograms. After it was transformed into magic power, it was vigorous, exquisite, and incomparably tough. It surged and gurgled with great momentum. Cultivators who cultivated the mixed true water were unparalleled in the world in terms of the density of their magic power. No cultivator of the same level could match them. Kong Nanhua cultivated the mixed true water. In terms of the total amount of his magic power, he could already challenge the old monsters of the Yuanying stage. Even some old monsters of the Yuanying stage might not have as much magic power as him. The current Kong Nanhua, with his magic power and supernatural powers, could even put up a fight against the Gung Metal Tiger King. Yuanying stage cultivators like the 100 Herbs ancestor, who were not good at fighting and killing, might even lose to Kong Nanhua. Lin Feng's expression was solemn. He nodded and said, "Nanhua, congratulations. I still have to thank Sect Master for your help." Kong Nanhua smiled. "Where are Xiao Yan and the others? Speaking of which, I haven't given them a greeting gift. It's not that I didn't want to give them anything before, but I really didn't have anything to give them. Now I can finally make up for it." Xiao Yan and the others rushed over when they heard the news. Kong Nanhua formed a seal with both hands. The sand of the Ganges River and the mixed true water, the 2 great treasures of the world, appeared in front of everyone at the same time. A grain of Ganges River sand and a drop of mixed true water formed a pair. Then, countless grains of sand and water fused again, forming 4 small shields that landed in front of Xiao Yan and the others. This is called the Ganges River Mixed True Water Shield. Consider it my greeting gift to the 4 of you. Kong Nanhua smiled and said, "It's very crude. Sorry for making a fool of myself. Kong Nan Hua taught them how to control it. The 4 Ganges River mixed true water shields belonged to the 4 of them. Xiao Yan bent his finger and lightly flicked the shield, feeling the concept of power within it. It feels so sturdy. Lin Feng said, of course it's sturdy. With the defensive power of this shield, cultivators below the late stage of the golden elixir stage can do nothing to it. Even leaving a scratch on it would take a lot of effort. Late stage of the golden elixir stage cultivators would have to use all their skills to break this shield. Only cultivators with powerful magical weapons and magical powers would be able to do so. Even if it's a Yuanying stage cultivator, this Ganges River mixed true water shield can withstand an attack from them. Lin Feng smiled and said, with these 4 turtle shells, even if you guys encounter a strong enemy, you won't be able to defeat them. The other party won't be able to do anything to you. The eyes of Xiao Yan and the others lit up. When they carefully sized up the Ganges River mixed true water shield, their gazes were different. The little guy's big black and white eyes turned. He moved closer to Kong Nan Hua and said with a smile, Mr. Kong, what other good things do you have? Give them all to us at once. Xiao Yan and the others laughed and scolded, you brat, you're too thick-skinned. Lin Feng patted the little guy's head. One must be content. If you really want something, Master has already prepared something for you. The little guy shrunk his head and said with a smile, I knew it. Since Mr. Kong is so generous, how could Master be stingy? There's no hurry. Let's go on a long journey first. I'll tell you guys in detail on the way. Lin Feng turned his head to look at Kong Nan Hua. I'm going to the vast sea assembly. While I'm away from the mountain, I'll leave this place to you. Kong Nan Hua nodded with a smile. I just need time to nourish my magic power and harmonize the water and the soil. After the sect master returns, I'll go through the lightning tribulation. Lin Feng said, that's for the best. I can also protect you. Wang Lin suddenly said, Master, I want to stay on the mountain to cultivate. I hope I can build my foundation. That's fine. Lin Feng thought for a while and agreed. I'll give you that treasure after you build your foundation. I'll congratulate you. Wang Lin nodded and cupped his hands at Kong Nan Hua. Mr. Kong, please take care of me from now on. Leave the trivial matters to me. You can cultivate with peace of mind. Kong Nan Hua nodded. Lin Feng turned his gaze to Yu Hongyan and suddenly said, Are you willing to come with me? Yu Hongyan was slightly stunned. Me too? Lin Feng answered indifferently, Your temperament is like a raging fire. You don't give in to men. Sitting in meditation and cultivating is actually not suitable for you. More experience in the world will help you improve your cultivation. Yu Hongyan thought for a while, and felt that what Lin Feng said was reasonable. He nodded. Thank you for your care, Senior. I can't thank you enough. We'll go now. Lin Feng nodded with satisfaction. With a wave of his sleeve, he swept Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Tiny Tot, and Yu Hongyan together and disappeared from Mount Yujing. When they reappeared, they were already above the sea of clouds above Mount Kunlun, flying north. Tiny Tot smiled. Master, what treasure did you prepare? Take it out now. Don't keep us in suspense. Impatient monkey. Lin Feng scolded with a smile. With a flick of his finger, 3 light balls appeared in the air. Chapter 179. Lin Feng flicked his finger and 3 balls of light appeared in midair. Waves of powerful magic power rippled outwards. Not only Xiao Yan's group of 3, even Yu Hongyan was curiously sizing up the 3 balls of light. Silently, a small black flag floated within one of the balls of light. It was the size of a palm, and the flag's surface and pole were both black. Black light circulated around the entire flag, making it seem extremely agile. As the flag's surface fluttered, the surrounding space also began to ripple like water. Within the second ball of light floated a sheathless longsword with a baleful aura that could startle ghosts and gods. As the sword's light flowed, The baleful aura was so dense that it could shake one's soul. Looking at this sword was like looking at a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, making one feel extremely uncomfortable. Within the last ball of light was a golden disk that flickered with a dazzling platinum radiance. Every ray of light was abnormally sharp, as if it could cut through space. Lin Feng first pointed at the small black flag and smiled. "You guys naturally recognize this?" The little guy smiled. "It's the black cloud flag, of course I recognize it." Lin Feng nodded his head and introduced the other two magic tools. "This sword is called the Seven Fiend Dragon Slaying Sword. Its baleful aura is extremely heavy. Just based on its attack power, there are very few magic tools from the Golden Elixir period that can compare to it." Zhu Yi looked at the Seven Fiend Dragon Slaying Sword and slightly frowned. "What a vicious sword!" Xiao Yan looked at the golden disc at the side. "When facing this thing, I feel a strong pressure." Lin Feng smiled. "This golden disc is called the Tiger Soul Golden Disc. Strictly speaking, it can't be considered a magic tool. It can only be considered a cage." The little guy curiously asked, "Cage?" "That's right. This golden disc was created when I killed the Gung Metal Tiger King and absorbed its demon infant essence. Then, I divided a portion of the demon infant essence and refined it into a demonic tiger soul that has no self-awareness but possesses peak golden elixir period battle strength." Lin Feng explained. "Those among you who obtain this tiger soul golden disc, when facing enemies, can release this demon tiger's soul essence. It is a good helper. As long as you have the golden disc, you can freely control the demon tiger's soul essence." Although these three items are only golden elixir period level treasures, they are definitely the best among magic tools of the same rank. Even if you guys obtain higher ranked magic tools, you won't be able to control them. A green light lit up in front of Lin Feng, a small bronze cauldron appeared. The profound and vast mana fluctuations within it made Xiao Yan and the others raise their eyebrows. The appearance of the bronze void cauldron immediately suppressed the black cloud flag, Seven Fiend Dragon Slaying Sword, and Tiger Soul Golden Disc. Lin Feng smiled and said, "Whoever among you brothers can form the golden elixir first, this treasure will be the reward from Master." Xiao Yan and the others heard this and instantly became interested. They looked at each other and revealed an eager and competitive expression. Lin Feng lightly flicked his finger and the black cloud flag floated in front of Xiao Yan. "Little Yan, no matter if it's your evil radiant overlord sword or the 8 trigrams collapse spell that you comprehended, with the power that you can control now, the attack power and destructive power are already enough. The evil radiant overlord sword even exceeds the limits of your control." Slowly Lin Feng said, "In this situation, what you need is to be more agile and faster. Master will bestow the black cloud flag to you. You have to carefully figure out its magical use." Xiao Yan nodded his head forcefully. Lin Feng's distribution was exactly what he wanted. In his current situation, he knew his own strength. 8 trigrams collapse spell, attack and defense were 1. Furthermore, he still had the trump card, the evil radiant overlord sword. No matter if it was attack or defense, there were no flaws. On the contrary, in terms of movement, Xiao Yan felt that he needed to strengthen himself to avoid being kited by agile enemies. The magical use of the black cloud flag to teleport over a short distance was exactly what he needed. Furthermore, there were other uses that were also very practical. Lin Feng passed the black cloud flag to Xiao Yan. Then, he stretched out his hand to grab the 7 demon dragon slaying sword and handed it to Zhu Yi. "Xiao Yi, this sword is for you." Zhu Yi respectfully received the 7 demon dragon slaying sword. He thought, "Master thinks that although my E-sword path has many changes and is suitable for all kinds of battles, it ultimately lacks the powerful destructive power to attack head-on?" Although he knew that out of the 3 treasures, the 7 demon dragon slaying sword was indeed the most suitable for him, Zhu Yi still felt a little awkward. It's just that this sword's murderous aura is too strong. It's a little too overbearing and lacks the aura of kingship. Lin Feng knew Zhu Yi's thoughts like the back of his hand. He said lightly, "Do you feel that this sword's murderous aura is too strong? It doesn't match your expectations?" After a moment of silence, Zhu Yi nodded calmly. "Master is wise. This sword really doesn't match the swordsmanship in Disciple's heart. This sword is ferocious. It even has the possibility of killing its owner. Your swordsmanship, your temperament, how can I not know?" Lin Feng said calmly. "It's because of this that I have bestowed this murderous sword to you." Zhu Yi was shocked. Lin Feng would definitely not deliberately trick him. Since he had made such an arrangement, there must be a deeper meaning in it. Lin Feng looked deeply at him. "Among all the disciples under me, your temperament is the steadiest. At the same time, your self-control is also the strongest. You are the most suitable person to wield this sword. At the same time, this will also be a form of training for you." On one hand, he hoped that Zhu Yi could control this murderous sword and not be tainted by it and become violent and murderous. At the same time, he also hoped to use the 7-demon dragon slaying sword to train Zhu Yi, so that Zhu Yi's will would be firmer, more indomitable, and more calm and self-control. Under the potential threat of the 7-demon dragon slaying sword, it also urged Zhu Yi to train even harder. The higher one's cultivation, the easier it was to control the 7-demon dragon slaying sword. Right now, when Lin Feng used the 7-demon dragon slaying sword, it was no different from using other swords. The 7-demon dragon slaying sword was as docile as a little sheep in front of him. Zhu Yi's breathing paused for a moment. He straightened his expression and solemnly bowed towards Lin Feng. "Disciple will not disappoint master." Lin Feng faintly smiled, saying in his heart, "Different people use different methods." Towards this kind of obedient donkey, continuously motivating him, letting him know that you have high hopes for him, this is indeed the most suitable method. From a practical point of view, among the golden elixir period artifacts in Lin Feng's hands, the most suitable one for Zhu Yi was the 7-demon dragon slaying sword. Xiao Yan's evil radiant overlord sword and Xiao Budian's unlimited wind and thunder, after raising its power to a certain level, were both powerful forces that could threaten cultivators in the golden elixir period when they were in the foundation building stage. Zhu Yi's sword of change was ever-changing and suitable for all kinds of battle situations. It did not have any obvious shortcomings. When fighting with enemies of the same level, he could choose the best way to restrain his opponent, but he would not let his opponent find any loopholes to restrain him. However, when Zhu Yi faced cultivators in the golden elixir period, if the other party directly fought head-on and forcefully crushed him with the advantage of transcendence energy, Zhu Yi would be in a very awkward situation. He lacked the powerful attack method to defeat the strong with one strike. And now, among the golden elixir period artifacts, the 7-demon dragon slaying sword, which could definitely be regarded as the top in terms of offensive power, just happened to make up for this flaw of Zhu Yi. Xiao Budian saw that Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi had obtained the Black Cloud Flag and the 7-demon dragon slaying sword respectively, so he looked at the Tiger Soul golden disc with a smile. "Master, then this is mine?" Lin Feng nodded and smiled. "Cherish it." "Thank you, master." Xiao Budian cheered. It was very obvious that Lin Feng had given full consideration when distributing the treasures. He tried to match the characteristics of the three of them as much as possible, maximizing their strength. As smart as Xiao Budian was, how could he not understand that his unlimited wind and thunder spell actually still had a flaw? Indeed, Lin Feng's 4 great disciples each comprehended their own spells from the 8 trigrams Great Tao Canon. In theory, Xiao Budian's unlimited wind and thunder was actually the most powerful. This was because as long as Xiao Budian was given enough time, he could raise the power of wind and thunder to a level that a foundation establishment stage cultivator could not reach. Even a golden elixir period cultivator would have to be careful when dealing with it. Wang Lin had not built his foundation yet, so he could temporarily ignore it. Although the power of Xiao Yan's 8 trigrams disintegration was strong, if Xiao Budian raised the unlimited wind and thunder to a certain level, then even the foundation establishment stage, Xiao Yan would not be able to disintegrate and destroy it. Back then, during the first internal competition between the 4 great disciples, Zhu Yi had always been suppressed by Xiao Budian. It was just that Xiao Budian was impatient at the end and gave Zhu Yi the opportunity to turn defeat into victory. However, the problem also lay in time. If there was not enough time for Xiao Budian to accumulate the power of wind and thunder, then the power of the unlimited wind and thunder would be greatly reduced. Lin Feng passing on the Tiger's soul golden disc to him was equivalent to giving him an extra bodyguard. During battle, it would buy him time to raise the power of the unlimited wind and thunder. As long as Xiao Budian was given enough time, his unlimited wind and thunder would definitely be a terrifying existence. Xiao Yan and the other 2 happily put away the treasures and refined them attentively. Lin Feng, on the other hand, turned his head to look at Yu Hongyan without batting an eyelid. The little girl looked at the 3 magic tools curiously, and there was more or less some envy in her expression. Lin Feng smiled in his heart and did not expose her. With a wave of his sleeve, he brought everyone north. After leaving the Kunlun mountain range, one could see the endless yellow sand in the distant horizon. And at the junction between the Kunlun mountain range and the vast sea desert, there was a magnificent ancient city. It was the great Qin dynasty's western border town, the Sand Continent. Further west from the Sand Continent was a boundless desert. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was chaotic and tyrannical. Ordinary people were basically unable to survive. Even if cultivators entered, they would encounter all kinds of unknown dangers. In such an environment where spiritual energy was extremely chaotic, the strength of cultivators would be greatly reduced. On the contrary, some of the foreign tribes of the wasteland, after thousands of years of reproduction, adapted to the dangerous environment and took root in the desert. They unearthed large amounts of rare treasures from the desert and brought them to the human world to trade. After a long period of hard work and a large amount of investment, the Heavenly Trade Pavilion successfully established a trade and trust relationship with the foreign tribes of the desert. Because of this, they also became the great Qin dynasty's tacit approval as the master of the Sand Continent City. When Lin Feng and the others entered the Sand Continent City, they were greeted by a wave of bustling atmosphere. On both sides of the street there were all kinds of shops. In front of the shops there were customers choosing goods, haggling, shouting advertisements. There were even people who did not have enough money on them and asked others to help them. After entering the Sand Continent City, Lin Feng only felt that he had suddenly returned from the world of cultivators to a mortal city. But in reality, other than the few streets near the city gate, after entering the center of the Sand Continent City, no matter if it was the merchants or the customers, the majority were cultivators. There were human cultivators, as well as odd-looking foreign tribes of the desert. "Senior, what's the matter with those 2 people?" Yu Hongyan suddenly asked. Lin Feng followed her direction and looked over. He saw 2 people walking side by side. One of them, although reserved, was looking at his companion with a gaze full of affection. What else could it be? Naturally it's. Lin Feng wanted to say something, but when he saw the other party's appearance, he didn't know how to answer Yu Hongyan's question. Chapter 180. Yu Hongyan stared at the other end of the street. Her expression was filled with confusion and curiosity. Lin Feng followed her gaze and saw 2 people standing side by side. They were choosing items in front of a shop. Although their eyes met by chance, Lin Feng could clearly see their love for each other. The 2 of them were full of tacit understanding. Their actions were incomparably in sync. In terms of appearance, they were both pleasing to the eye and amiable. But facing Yu Hongyan's pure eyes that were full of curiosity, Lin Feng could only feel cold sweat dripping down his back. Calming himself down, Lin Feng's expression was calm. He asked lightly, "What do you think their relationship is?" Yu Hongyan's face was filled with confusion. "They look like a couple?" Lin Feng coughed dryly. "Why haven't you seen something like this before?" Yu Hongyan shook her head with certainty. Lin Feng felt bitter in his mouth. How was he supposed to explain this to a girl who had never come into contact with such things? The two of them who loved each other so much, and were so sweet, were both king men. Love of a male? Love of a male? Love of splitting peaches? I don't think there are such illusions in this world. Lin Feng felt that a layer of white sweat was about to appear on his forehead. According to his estimation, in the Tianyuan world, this situation was probably not an isolated case. There should be a considerable number of people who liked men. Looking at the surrounding people, although they would occasionally look at the same couple, their gazes only flashed past. They did not seem surprised. It could be seen that this kind of thing was not shocking. Most people were used to it. Some beautiful girls would even shake their heads regretfully when they saw that both of them were handsome, as if they felt that it was a waste of resources. But the problem was that Yu Hongyan, who was in front of Lin Feng, seemed to be quite surprised, perhaps because of the environment she grew up in. It was no wonder. In the 16 years of Yu Hongyan's life, for as long as she could remember, she had lived in a struggle with the great Zhou dynasty. Today, I'm going to assassinate one of your generals. Tomorrow, your army will come and surround my nest. The people of the Society of the Strong Gale around him do not have this kind of thing. Normally, all of Yu Hongyan's intelligence is also used on practicing Dao techniques and fighting people. Although Yu Hongyan had a lot of basic social knowledge, the love between a man and a woman was obviously beyond the young lady's understanding. But this time, Lin Feng suffered. Facing Yu Hongyan's curious gaze, Lin Feng smiled bitterly in his heart. Do I have to create a fujoshi with my own hands? Just thinking about this kind of thing makes my balls hurt. He chose his words carefully and said slowly, "In this world, there are indeed some people, a very small number of people who love and adore those of the same sex." That's not entirely correct. Lin Feng looked at the pair on the opposite side of the street. You can also understand it this way. They don't like men, it's just that it just so happens that the person they like is a man. Yu Hongyan had a confused look, but it made Lin Feng even more confused. Isn't it said that the harmony of yin and yang is the great Tao of heaven and earth? Yu Hongyan said in confusion. Lin Feng's lips moved, but no sound came out. Making a straight man explain to a beautiful girl what it means to be a girl, this is definitely a kind of torture. Yu Hongyan had a somewhat understanding look. Could it be that the love that surpasses the great Tao of heaven and earth is true love? Senior, what's wrong? There's a lot of sweat on your face. The corner of Lin Feng's mouth twitched. He almost choked on his own saliva. He looked very seriously at Yu Hongyan and said, I can only say that everyone has their own preferences, you don't need to look at them differently. But believe me, in this world, there are still a majority of men who love women. I still don't understand. Yu Hongyan sighed, but she quickly threw these things to the back of her mind. But, it's not something important. Lin Feng laughed and thought, it's best that you don't think about it anymore. Otherwise, I really don't know what to say. Miss, is this your first time participating in the vast ocean spell assembly? At this moment, a slightly frivolous voice suddenly rang in his ear. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. He looked at the other party, then at the beautiful Yu Hongyan beside him, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Once upon a time, this brother's dream in life was to be a young master who led a bunch of lackeys and bullied innocent women in broad daylight. The person who came was a young man in a red robe, his face was like jade, and he looked a bit elegant. He lightly waved his folding fan, and his cultivation was in the middle stage of foundation establishment. It was obvious that he was young and rich, and his appearance was very good, attracting many ignorant girls to throw themselves at him. However, there was a bit of lust between his brows, which made people feel very uncomfortable. There was a group of people behind the young man in a red robe. With a glance, Lin Feng saw that they were all in the foundation establishment stage, and there were even 2 late-stage foundation establishment cultivators. Lin Feng didn't need to think carefully to know what the person was planning. Feeling a bit bored, he waved his hand and signaled Xiao Yan and the other 2 to come over and send them away. Lin Feng didn't have any intention of fighting this kind of people. Yu Hongyan looked at the young man in a red robe approaching her, and a pair of fiery red sword-like eyebrows slightly raised. Her thin eyebrows, which seemed very gentle when facing Lin Feng, were now like a pair of thin swords that could kill people. This action of hers, on the contrary, added a bit of heroic spirit to her beauty, which was rare for ordinary girls. The young man in a red robe's gaze instantly became even more fervent, and he thought, seeing that she's not even 20 years old, she's already at the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage like me. Her talent is really not bad. If I bring her back and take her in, I believe that father and mother will be satisfied when they give birth to talented children in the future. He looked at Yu Hongyan and said with a smile, "Miss, this is your first time here, and you're not familiar with the people and the place. I believe that there will be many inconveniences. Why don't I lead the way for you? My Red Haze sect is on the surface of the Sand Continent, and even the Heavenly Trade Pavilion has to give some face." Red Haze sect? I've never heard of it. Lin Feng looked at the young man in a red robe with some amusement. His ears moved slightly, and he heard people discussing in low voices in the surrounding crowd. This guy is here to harm women again. Why doesn't the heavens take him? Lower your voice, it's better to avoid trouble. His Red Haze sect is only a second or third-rate sect, but they have a strong backing. Their sect leader's sister is the concubine of the Yu family, one of the 4 great families of the Great Qin dynasty. It's fine if it's an ordinary concubine, but their aunt is very favored by the Yu family's leader. Sigh, the Yu family. No wonder even the Heavenly Trade Pavilion has to give them face. What a sin! Lin Feng's face revealed an expression that was not a smile, thinking, "Yu family, hee." Facing the young man in a red robe, Yu Hongyan's expression was calm, and he replied indifferently, "Thank you, but I don't need it. And it's a rose with thorns." The young man in a red robe stared at Yu Hongyan's exquisite and alluring body, and his heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. At this moment, his gaze swept to the faint smile on Lin Feng's face, and he frowned. He looked Lin Feng up and down. "A mortal ant, what are you looking at, Scram?" Lin Feng laughed and shook his head. Because of the system's concealment, others couldn't see the depth of his cultivation, but he really hadn't been ridiculed like this for a long time. Yu Hongyan's thin sword-like red eyebrows immediately stood up. His body moved, but he stopped abruptly, and turned around to look at Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled and nodded slightly. He looked at the young man in a red robe and thought to himself, "Dumbass, to bully the young master of a good family, you need to have a brain and eyes, or else you'll be kicking an iron plate at any time." Seeing the exchange of gazes between the two, the young man in a red robe's face became even more gloomy. "Miss, it's not that I want to say this, but a mortal without any cultivation, and a person from a completely different world from you and me, is really not worthy of." Before he could finish his sentence, the second half of his sentence got stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say it anymore. He saw that Yu Hongyan, who had her back to him, didn't turn around. She raised her arm, and with a backhand elbow, she stabbed straight into his heart. With Lin Feng's permission, and knowing that she wouldn't ruin Lin Feng's plan, Yu Hongyan instantly had no more scruples. She didn't take out her black halberd, and just used her arm as a spear. The tip of her elbow was the tip of the spear, her forearm was the shaft, and her fist was the end of the spear. She swung her elbow like a big spear, and stabbed towards the chest of the young man in a red robe. The strong explosive force directly made it hard for the young man in a red robe to breathe, and the latter half of the sentence that he wanted to say was forcibly suppressed back into his stomach. Although she used her elbow as a spear, Yu Hongyan's physical martial arts assassination was extremely fierce. Anyone could see that as long as the tip of her elbow stabbed, even steel and hard stone would be pierced through. Although the cultivation of the young man in a red robe was the same as Yu Hongyan in the middle stage of foundation establishment, he was used to living like a prince. How could he have such rich life and death experience like Yu Hongyan? Moreover, Yu Hongyan specialized in physical supernatural powers and martial arts killing technique. At such a close distance, no Dharma cultivator could be her opponent. The young man in a red robe was caught off guard, and he couldn't even react in time. Fortunately, the quality of the robe he was wearing was good. With a flash of red light, he blocked Yu Hongyan's big spear-like elbow. "Break!" Yu Hongyan shouted, and the flame at the top of the beer in the sea of qi suddenly flashed, and a tyrannical mana exploded. Her elbow was like a hot knife through butter, and directly broke through the opponent's defense. Her elbow still hit the young man in a red robe's heart. The young man in a red robe suddenly felt that all his internal organs had changed positions. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and fell to the ground like a dead fish. Before he landed on the ground, his eyes had already turned black, and he fainted. The originally noisy street suddenly quietened down, and everyone looked at Yu Hongyan in a daze. No one expected that this little girl would be so fierce. Without saying a word, she beat the opponent half to death with one move. Lin Feng also looked at Yu Hongyan speechlessly. Although he knew that she was fierce, Lin Feng really couldn't associate this female T-Rex in front of him with that ignorant girl just now. At this time, Xiao Yan and the other two had just arrived. Looking at the scene in front of them, the little one murmured, "Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, I didn't offend Sister Hongyan before, did I?" The corner of Zhu Yi's mouth twitched twice, and she turned her head away without saying a word. Xiao Yan snorted angrily, "Who cares about you? I'm trying to remember if I've offended her before." Chapter 181. Knocking down the red-robed youth with one elbow, Yu Hongyan seemed to have done something insignificant. Her murderous, sword-like red eyebrows also became much calmer. At this moment, the group of Red Haze sect cultivators behind the red-robed youth came to their senses and rushed forward while cursing. Yu Hongyan's fiery red eyes flashed. With a wave of her right hand, a jet-black halberd appeared in her hand. The other party was led by two late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators. A total of more than 10 Foundation establishment cultivators surrounded and attacked. However, Yu Hongyan did not care at all. Black light flowed on the halberd. With a wave of her hand, a black flame filled the sky. Not only did she not dodge, but she also raised her black flame halberd and rushed towards the group of Red Haze sect cultivators. "How dare you!" A late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator from the Red Haze sect shouted angrily. He took out a fiery red bamboo whip and flew into the air. The 9 bamboo joints of the bamboo whip flickered rhythmically with a red light. In the next moment, 9 fire divine bullets emerged from the bamboo whip and shot towards Yu Hongyan. The other late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator clasped his palms together, and a thick red mist rose from the ground, enveloping everyone present. Silently, Lin Feng allowed the red mist to touch his body. He did not resist. The other party's method was like a drizzle to him. It would not cause him any harm at all. The red mist clearly had a certain corrosive nature. It would corrode the opponent's magic power and magic tools. The red mist was extremely sticky. Being in it was like falling into a quicksand well. Lin Feng was observing Yu Hongyan. He wanted to see how this little girl would deal with such an environment. In all fairness, Yu Hongyan's combat strength was somewhat beyond his expectations. However, after thinking about it carefully, it was understandable. Yu Hongyan, who had fought through thousands of life and death battles, strictly speaking, had more combat experience than Lin Feng and his 4 disciples combined. Right now, Lin Feng was much stronger than her. He could crush her with pure strength. Under such circumstances, no amount of battle wisdom or combat experience would be of much use. If I stretch out a finger, or even blow on you, you'll be dead. In this case, no matter how experienced you are, it's useless. However, if the opponent's cultivation level was the same as Yu Hongyan's, then Yu Hongyan would be almost invincible in a battle of magical powers. Under the same cultivation conditions, a theoretical bookworm against a battle-hardened veteran, there was no need to even think about the result. There was no other possibility other than instant death. Even if Yu Hongyan encountered an opponent with a higher cultivation base than her, as long as the gap wasn't too big, she could still win. As the old saying goes, I'm no match for you in terms of skills, but I have a way to kill you. At this moment, Yu Hongyan was like this. Facing two late-stage foundation establishment cultivators whose cultivation bases were higher than hers, she had a calm expression. At the top of the 9-level beer platform above her sea of qi, flames burned fiercely. She cultivated the Great Destruction True Fire technique to the extreme. The red-clothed girl's body was covered in black flames, blocking the red mist that was surging towards her. Then, she charged forward like an arrow released from a bow. As usual, this fierce girl never had the word retreat in her dictionary. She raised the 12-feet-long black flame halberd in her hand and used the Great Destruction spear, directly breaking through the layers of red mist in front of her and advancing bravely. At this moment, 9 fire divine bullets also followed different trajectories and shot towards Yu Hongyan's head like a meteor shower. Under the control of the Red Haze sect cultivator, these fire divine bullets were either fast or slow, and their angles covered all directions, becoming extremely strange and unpredictable. If one could defend against the first wave, they would not be able to defend against the second wave. These fire divine bullets were meticulously refined by him, and they were extremely powerful. Each of them was almost comparable to a golden elixir talisman. Usually, they were stored in artifacts and were considered consumables. Every time they were used, there would be one less, and they would need to be refined again later. This time, seeing that the young master was injured, he was anxious and released all of them at once. Yu Hongyan once again displayed her fearlessness and bravery. Facing these 9 fire divine bullets, she faced them head-on without any fear. It's just that in this wave of attacks, apart from Yu Hongyan's valiant fighting style, she also showed Lin Feng the exquisite side of her technique. The black flame halberd seemed bold and unrestrained, but it continuously drew mysterious arcs in the air, accurately striking the fire divine bullets one after another. Yu Hongyan controlled her power precisely to the extreme. Without detonating them, she sent 3 fire divine bullets flying. The red mist sect cultivator's face instantly turned green. The next few fire divine bullets, he was going to detonate them with his own magic power the moment Yu Hongyan's halberd touched them. Who knew that Yu Hongyan would clearly see through his thoughts? The rhythm of the black flame halberd's attacks changed, and it suddenly slowed down by half a beat. In the end, before Yu Hongyan could get close, the red mist sect cultivator detonated the fire divine bullets first. They exploded in the air for nothing, and they did not pose any threat to Yu Hongyan. Lin Feng saw that the other party looked like he was about to cry, and he couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. They are not on the same level at all. The other party couldn't figure out Yu Hongyan's rhythm, but Yu Hongyan had a clear grasp of the pattern in which he controlled the fire divine bullets. With a wave of the black flame halberd in the air, all the other fire divine bullets were knocked away. She didn't just simply knock the fire divine bullets away, she accurately controlled the landing points of these fireballs, and used them to blow up the surrounding red mist. In a round of attacks, Yu Hongyan counteracted and attacked, completely dispelling the spells of the 2 late-stage foundation-building cultivators. In the next moment, she was already in front of the 2 of them. Compared to middle-stage foundation-building cultivators, Late-stage foundation building cultivators did not have an obvious advantage in terms of magic power. Moreover, these two were clearly spell cultivators, so when Yu Hongyan, who was proficient in martial arts, got close to them, their fates were obvious. With a light feint, Yu Hongyan tricked the two of them into confusion, and then with 2 swishes of her spear, the two of them were directly sent to the next world. The other Red Mist sect cultivators originally wanted to surround and attack, but when they saw the blood dripping from the tip of Yu Hongyan's spear and her red eyes that seemed to be burning, their courage instantly disappeared. They picked up the red-robed young man who was still unconscious on the ground and fled in panic. Everyone in the surroundings looked at Yu Hongyan with complicated expressions. Not only was this woman fierce, she was also extremely murderous. She killed 2 opponents whose cultivation levels were higher than hers on the spot, and she didn't even bat an eyelid. Lin Feng watched from the side, and after a moment of silence, he turned his head to look at Xiao Yan and the other 2 beside him, and said with a smile, "All of you have learned something, right?" Seeing Yu Hongyan nonchalantly put away her large halberd and walked over, Xiao Yan and the other 2 nodded their heads like chicks pecking at rice. We have. Lin Feng looked at the Red Mist sect people walking away and thought, "This is also the territory of the Great Qin dynasty. I wonder if there is anyone from the Yu clan participating in the vast ocean spell assembly? If there is, haha." Yu Hongyan came in front of Lin Feng and smiled apologetically. "I have caused trouble for Senior Hongyan is ashamed. No matter, this is a small matter, I will not take it to heart." Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. After this small interlude, Lin Feng and the others began to focus their attention on the various large shops in the Sand Continent city. "Go and look around. If you see anything that suits you, just buy it." Under Lin Feng's command, Xiao Yan and the other 2 laughed and walked on the street, wandering on their own. "I brought you guys out to look for treasures," Lin Feng thought happily. Every time he went out to buy, it was a joyful thing. He did not need to waste time to choose, he just needed to send his disciples out together, and they would naturally come back with a pile of good things. He stared at Zhu Yi's back and smiled unscrupulously. "Especially little E, 10 points of fortune, this is a fellow who goes out to look for treasures. I have been too busy recently, it has really buried your talent." Lin Feng even thought unscrupulously that when everything in the sect was on the right track and Zhu Yi's cultivation was slightly higher, he might as well send this fellow out often. Yu Hongyan did not go. He remained beside Lin Feng and looked at him strangely. Lin Feng coughed lightly. "Let's go and look around, is there anything you like?" Yu Hongyan shook his head, looking at the goods sold in the surrounding shops. His eyes were only a little curious, but there was no desire or interest in them. Lin Feng came to the front of a shop. As soon as he entered, a middle-aged man came up to him. This person's skin was sallow, his appearance was strange. His skin seemed to have been dehydrated for a long time, like old tree bark. There were cracks all over it. But in these cracks there was a faint light flowing, it looked extraordinary. His pupils were clearly different from those of ordinary people. They were like golden rings. A desert tribe, huh? Lin Feng suddenly understood. The other party looked at Yu Hongyan, then very enthusiastically took out a dark blue pearl. This pearl contained an extremely rich water element essence. According to the owner's introduction, this pearl had a special effect. It could help female cultivators maintain their youth. Lin Feng was speechless. Did he look like a fool who would obediently pay for a beauty's smile? Although it was a little funny, Lin Feng still turned his head to look at Yu Hongyan. After all, it was in women's nature to love beauty. Maybe Yu Hongyan would like this thing. Unexpectedly, what he saw was Yu Hongyan pursing his lips, his face directly turned to the other side, his mouth lightly muttering something. What? The owner did not hear clearly, he was a little confused. But Lin Feng heard it clearly. Yu Hongyan clearly said, "Useless trash. Looks like only things that are useful in battle are useful in your eyes." Lin Feng laughed and shook his head. The owner still wanted to ask them to stay, But Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan had already left the shop. As soon as they left the shop, they saw Zhu Yi walking towards them, holding a fragrance bag in his hand. Seeing this, Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up like light bulbs. Master, disciple feels that this thing is very strange. Looking at it, I feel close to it, but also feel disgusted. It's very strange. Zhu Yi handed the fragrance bag to Lin Feng. So I made the decision to buy it. It's just that the price is a little bit expensive. Not expensive, not expensive, not expensive. Lin Feng said repeatedly. If you see anything you like, just buy it. Master will pay for everything. Holding the fragrance bag in his hand, Lin Feng immediately understood why Zhu Yi felt close to it, but also disgusted. The problem was not the fragrance bag itself, but the material used to weave the fragrance bag. The cloth used to sew this fragrance bag, for some reason, actually contained a bit of the concept of the power of the great sun. Zhu Yi's pill cauldron was fused with the magic power of the path of darkness. It lacked the magic power of the path of light to be perfected. This fragrance bag's cloth was something he urgently needed. No wonder he felt close to it. But the existing darkness and light formed an opposition, so even though Zhu Yi felt close to it, he also inexplicably felt disgusted. But Lin Feng carefully held the fragrance bag, stretched out his index finger and lightly scratched it, tearing open the outer cloth, revealing the stuffing inside. It was a small crimson-red grain, emitting a faint golden light like grass seeds. Lin Feng slightly frowned. He used his magic power to carefully examine it. After a while, his eyes suddenly widened. He suddenly turned his head to look at Zhu Yi. Zhu Yi was baffled by his master's stare. Lin Feng withdrew his gaze, sighing softly. I really can't not believe it. It really is Zhu Yi's certification. It must be the best. Chapter 182. Holding the sachet, Lin Feng could feel a bit of the concept of the power of the great sun from the cloth that was sewn into it. He probed it with his magic power, and after a while, he gradually found out what was inside. In the depths of the boundless darkness, a bright light suddenly shone. In the light, a Buddha stood upright in the void, forming a seal with his hands and emitting boundless light. Lin Feng had already understood that the cloth that was made into the sachet was actually a fragment of the kasaya worn by the great monks of the Great Thunderclap Monastery. The kasaya worn by the monks of the Great Thunderclap Monastery with extremely high status were usually top-notch magic treasures, or even magic treasures. However, the cloth in front of him was only a fragment of a kasaya. The magic power within it had already dissipated, leaving behind only some remnant power aura. Even so, the remnant power was still very impressive. It was obvious that it was a very high-grade magic treasure kasaya. Especially the Buddhist Dharma used to refine this kasaya, Lin Feng had a vague impression of it. The Infinite Light Buddha Sutra, the supreme scripture of the Great Thunderclap Monastery of the Buddhist Sacred Land, was one of the 5 directions Buddha Sutras. It was the supreme Tao of the great heaven primordial world that described the path of light to the extreme. Looking at this fragment of the kasaya and feeling the remnant concept of the Infinite Light Buddha Sutra, I can really deeply understand what it means to say that a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Lin Feng shook his head and then took out a few crimson-red grass seeds emitting a faint golden glow from his pouch. No matter how profound the concept of strength is, in the end it is still an incomplete fragment, its use is limited. But this thing is incredible. At the beginning, Lin Feng's attention was also on the cloth that was sewn into the sachet. Later on, he discovered that the filling of the sachet was actually the seed of a precious spiritual herb called shiha grass. Shiha grass itself was not very valuable. Whether it was used to refine pills or forge weapons, it did not have much use. Furthermore, it was extremely rare and almost extinct. Luckily, the cultivation world of the great heaven primordial world did not have much demand for it. Therefore, even though it was rare, no one cared about it. However, Lin Feng had to care because this Shiha grass was the only spiritual herb that could be used as fuel for the solar true fire. With a large amount of Shiha grass, Lin Feng could cultivate his solar true fire seed into the real solar true fire. Although Lin Feng's fire seed could activate the true fire of the sun, in essence, it was not the true fire of the sun. It could only be considered as a castrated true fire. The solar true fire, nether evil flame, and Ksitigarbha true flame were the 7 true flames. As for Lin Feng's fire seed, it was processed by the Golden Crow Great Sage and passed on to his descendants. In order to make it easier for them to control it, the Golden Crow Great Sage had specially processed it and suppressed the power of the true fire. Lin Feng had always felt regretful about this. Now if he could obtain large amounts of Shiha grass, then cultivating the complete version of the true fire of the sun would be feasible. After Xiao Xiao Buddha from Tian, Buddha, Sunday, had Xiao Yen Feng, Xiao Shiha sun seed, and the Feng had the little one he from of saint of, Xiao sacred, by Yen, Xiao and Xiao Yen and Xiao Buddha 1. As expected of the fortune of the 8th rank. Their gains are not small either. Lin Feng checked the things they brought. He thought, but they are not things that can be used immediately. Let's put them aside first. Lin Feng led his 3 disciples and Yu Hongyan, who was getting closer to his sect. They continued to walk on the streets of Sand Continent City. The most important goal of this trip was the Heaven Splendor 9-Heart Lotus. According to the information provided by Kong Nanhua, Lin Feng and the others came to a big shop in the south of Sand Continent City. During the 2 previous vast ocean Dharma assemblies, it was said that the Heaven Splendor 9-Heart Lotus had appeared here. Lin Feng entered the front hall of the shop. There were not many people here, but everyone had strong mana wave. The weakest was a foundation establishment cultivator. Most were golden elixir period cultivators. Lin Feng could vaguely feel the terrifying mana waves of a yuanying old monster on the upper floor of the shop. On the wall facing the entrance of the hall, there were paintings floating all over the wall. Naturally, this shop did not sell paintings and calligraphy. The images that appeared on each scroll were all different shapes and sizes of all kinds of rare treasures. On the side of the pictures of the treasures, there were special words that introduced the treasure's origin, use, and price. Sometimes, the picture on a painting would suddenly disappear. The painting would become a piece of white paper. This meant that the item had been bought by someone. The shop was temporarily out of stock. Lin Feng scanned the nearly 100 paintings on the wall. Very quickly, he found his target in a conspicuous position. On the painting, there was a green lotus seed pod. On the lotus seed pod, there were 9 lotus seeds. It flashed with colorful splendor. It was dazzling. On the bottom right corner of the painting, the words, Heaven Splendor 9-Heart Lotus, were written. Price. Negotiate face to face? Lin Feng frowned slightly. He thought of what Kong Nanhua had said. The person who sold the Heaven Splendor 9-Heart Lotus actually wanted to barter for something else. He had been unsuccessful for 2 consecutive years. It was clear that the treasure he was looking for was not ordinary. Lin Feng pondered for a moment. He called the shop's steward and pointed at the Heaven Splendor 9-Heart Lotus. Contact the seller for me. I want this treasure. Even though the manager can't see through Lin Feng's level, he's used to seeing powerful people and doesn't dare to be the slightest bit negligent, respectfully replying, Customer, I will immediately help you send a message, but true monarch Miraflower's whereabouts are erratic. I really don't dare to guarantee when he will arrive, please forgive me. True monarch Miraflower? Lin Feng's pupils contracted slightly. According to the rules of the human cultivation world in the heaven primordial world, those in the golden elixir period were called perfected beings. Those in the yuanying period were called true monarchs or patriarch. Since this person was called true monarch Miraflower, He should be a Yuanying period cultivator. The steward nodded. That's right. The Heaven Splendor 9 Heart Lotus was left for sale by True Monarch Mirror Flower and Miao Shihao. True Monarch Mirror Flower, Miao Shihao? Why did it sound so strange? Yes, Miao Shihao. It was a very heroic and manly name, but his title was Mirror Flower. It felt like watching a brute play with an embroidery needle. While Lin Feng was thinking, he suddenly felt a strong fluctuation of magic power at the door of the shop. The other party did not care at all that there were other Yuanying old monsters in the shop. He just released his magic power wantonly. The intent realm of power that could penetrate the void was enough to show that this person was also in the Yuanying period. Lin Feng turned his head around, but was abruptly stunned. The person who came into view was a tall young man with exquisite facial features. To put it bluntly, he was the most handsome man Lin Feng had ever seen in his life. It was just that such a handsome man was wearing a violet robe with golden edges. He was tall and slender, had skin as white as a virgin, and his eyebrows had been carefully trimmed. As soon as he entered the shop, a delicate fragrance hit Lin Feng's face and almost made him tumble. He walked towards Lin Feng. As he walked, his knees frequently bumped together and his hips twisted exaggeratedly. The most outrageous thing was that he raised his right hand and made a orchid gesture. Yo, I felt someone using magic power to explore my Heaven Splendor 9 Heart Lotus painting, so I rushed over to see who has taken a fancy to my treasure. The young man walked to Lin Feng's side with a charming smile. His pair of beautiful eyes were shining as he looked at Lin Feng. F***ck, where did this sissy pop out from? Lin Feng shivered and felt a layer of goosebumps all over his body. At this moment, he heard the shop steward beside him bow respectfully to the handsome young man. True Lord Miao, you've come. It's this gentleman who has taken a fancy to your Heaven Splendor 9 Heart Lotus. I was just about to find a way to inform you. Lin Feng shuddered and wailed in his heart. No way? Damn, this is that true Lord Mirrorflower Miao Shihao? Xiao Yan and the others also had a strange expression as they looked at the incomparably enchanting true Lord Miao. No matter how strange they felt, the man in front of them was even more charming than a real woman like Yu Hongyan. His whole body was wantonly emitting powerful magic power wave. He was indeed a Yuanying old monster. Miao Shihao's eyes wandered and looked at Lin Feng a few times. He raised his slender fingers that were as delicate as spring onions and covered his lips with a smile that was endlessly charming. You look pleasing to the eye. Come, let's talk. The shop naturally had a quiet room prepared for these high-class customers. The environment was incomparably elegant, and the seats were all made of supreme-grade soft purple jade. When a cultivator sat on it, they didn't need to circulate their qi, and the magic power in their body would naturally be nourished. In the corner of the quiet room, light smoke curled up from the incense burner. It was an incense made from a mixture of many spirit herbs. The spiritual energy was abundant and had an excellent nourishing effect on the soul and body of a cultivator. However, when Lin Feng and the others entered the quiet room, they all felt very uncomfortable. Obviously, this quiet room was exclusive to Miao Shihao alone. He should be a big customer of this shop, so he had his own quiet room and could arrange the layout and environment of the quiet room as he pleased. The problem was, this true Lord Mirrorflower decorated the quiet room like a lady's boudoir. What was he up to? Get the Heavenly Splendor 9 Heart Lotuses and leave immediately. Lin Feng really didn't want to stay here for another minute. This handsome true Lord Mirrorflower in front of him could no longer be described as feminine. Zhu Yi was a little more shrewd, but like Lin Feng, he didn't reveal his true thoughts. Both Xiao Yan and Yu Hongyan looked very uncomfortable. On the other hand, Tiny Tot seemed very curious, looking left and right. After entering the quiet room, Miao Shihao didn't greet Lin Feng and the others. He lay down on a long couch and gently supported his cheek with his right hand, looking at Lin Feng with incomparable laziness. His action made the corners of Lin Feng's mouth twitch uncontrollably again. This is an action exclusive to beautiful women, okay? I admit that you're also very beautiful, but you're AF * king man, okay? Don't think I didn't look carefully, you definitely have AF * king Adam's apple. At this moment, Lin Feng only felt that 10,000 alpacas were galloping madly in his heart. Miao Shihao didn't feel anything and still looked languid. His lips opened slightly. Let me say this first. If you want the heavenly splendor 9 heart lotuses, you can, but you have to exchange it with something I specify. Otherwise, there's no way. He chuckled. Brother Shihao, what I want is not so easy to find. Chapter 183. Brother Shihao, it's not that easy to find what I want. Miao Shihao covered his lips and chuckled, looking extremely charming. The corner of Lin Feng's mouth twitched, and he said indifferently, What is it that you're looking for? Miao Shihao raised his left hand and placed it in front of him. He looked at his slender hand, which was more delicate than a woman's, and said casually, Brother Shihao, I only need one of the 6 great true water in the world. Do you have it? Lin Feng raised his eyebrows. Unfortunately, I do have it. Miao Shihao put down his hand and looked at Lin Feng with interest. You really have it? Lin Feng nodded. Are you satisfied with the Yellow Springs True Water? The Yellow Springs True Water is indeed one of the 6 great true water in the world. Miao Shihao said slowly, Unfortunately, I can't. Lin Feng frowned slightly. Are you making fun of me? Miao Shihao looked at Lin Feng curiously. After a while, he laughed delicately. Don't be angry, don't be angry. I didn't finish my sentence just now. He raised a slender finger and shook it lightly. I do want the 6 great true water, but I only want the first heaven true water or the lunar true water. I don't want anything else. Lin Feng looked at him silently. What else is there to pay attention to? Of course. Miao Shihao flicked his fingernails and became indifferent again. The Blood River True Water is too dirty. Can it still be called water? The Xianming True Water is too cold. Brother Shihao, I don't like it. I like it to be warm like flowers in spring all year round. The Primordial True Water is too cumbersome. I don't like it either. I like things that are light. He raised his head and looked at Lin Feng. As for the Yellow Springs True Water, it's dry and boring. I don't like it either. Lin Feng was speechless for a long time. He thought to himself, You are so picky. Are you raising fish? After thinking for a moment, he slowly said, It's hard to say about the lunar true water, but as far as I know, the spring of the first sky true water is at the mountain gate of the Taishu Temple. Miao Shihao raised his hand and interrupted Lin Feng's words. With a face full of disgust, he said, Don't mention the words Taishu Temple in front of me. It's disgusting and disgusting. If I had enough power now, the first thing I would do would be to destroy the Taishu Temple. Miao Shihao pursed his lips. If you want me to go to the Taishu Temple to beg for the Tianyi True Water, don't even think about it in my next life. He furrowed his willowy eyebrows in distress and rubbed his temples with his fingers. The Tianyi True Water has been taken by those coarse people who like to embroider white clouds on their clothes. There's still no news about the whereabouts of the lunar True Water. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be so worried. Coarse people? Hearing Miao Shihao's evaluation of the cultivators of the Taishu Temple, Lin Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just the cultivators of the Taishu Temple that he had already met, Yan Mingyue, Pang Jie, and Chun Gang, were all impeccable in terms of appearance, regardless of their cultivation, temperament, standpoint, or personality. Miao Shihao looked at Lin Feng and angrily slapped the short table in front of him. If it wasn't so hard to find, Why do you think I put my beloved heavenly flower 9 hearts lotus up for sale? I even put it up for 3 years without finding anything." Lin Feng smiled faintly. "Fellow Taoist, you are confused. This is not the attitude you should have when discussing matters." Miao Shihao looked at Lin Feng in surprise. "What? Don't tell me you really have the heavenly true water or the lunar true water in addition to the Yellow Springs true water." He had clearly stated what he wanted, but Lin Feng didn't seem to have any intention of giving up. It was obvious that he had a card up his sleeve. This made Miao Shihao somewhat hopeful. But soon, a wary expression appeared on Miao Shihao's face. "I can't see through your cultivation. Don't tell me you're from the Taishu Temple? Are the 4 people behind you from the same sect or your disciples? Judging from the fluctuations of their transcendence energy, they don't seem to be cultivating the Taoist arts of the Taishu Temple." Lin Feng didn't answer. Instead, he took out a small porcelain bottle and removed the transcendence energy seal on the bottle's mouth. Immediately, a faint fragrance floated out from the small bottle. It exuded a mysterious aura of the Mother of Creation that could transform all living things. Miao Shihao's eyes immediately lit up. "It really is the heavenly true water?" He sat up on the long couch and stared at the small porcelain bottle in Lin Feng's hand with a pair of bright eyes. Lin Feng smiled faintly. "I just don't know if this little bit of heavenly true water is enough for you, fellow Taoist? If there's more, I don't have any more." Miao Shihao nodded. "This small bottle is enough." He looked at Lin Feng. "How did you get this heavenly true water? I don't mean anything else. I just want to know if you're a friend or a foe of the Taishu Temple." "There's no harm in telling you." Lin Feng smiled faintly. "There was a junior from the Taishu Temple who acted presumptuously in front of me, so I killed him. This heavenly true water was obtained from that person." Miao Shihao's eyes suddenly lit up. "Was that person called Chun Gang?" Lin Feng looked up and met his gaze calmly. "I don't know about that. I don't have the habit of asking people's names before I make a move. Please don't misunderstand." Miao Shihao smiled charmingly. "A few months ago, a disciple of the Taishu Temple called Chun Gang suddenly lost contact with him. Although the Taishu Temple covered up the news very tightly, they couldn't hide it from me. At that time, I was still thinking who else would dare to kill someone from the Taishu Temple other than the demons, the Mount Shu Sword Sect, and the Great Zhou Dynasty. I didn't expect it to be you. TSK, well done." Miao Shihao made a pinching gesture with his right hand and pointed lightly in the air. Instantly, a 7-colored treasure light flashed in the air. Within the treasure light, a lotus seed pod appeared. The 9 lotus seeds on the seed pod shone brightly and exuded overwhelming spirit chi. "Since you killed that uncouth Chun Gang, I'll give you this heavenly flower 9-heart lotus seed pod." As he spoke, the heavenly flower 9-heart lotus seed pod had already landed in front of Lin Feng. This made Lin Feng a little surprised. He scanned it with his dermic powers and immediately knew that Miao Shihao didn't tamper with it. What was placed in front of him was a genuine heavenly flower 9-heart lotus seed pod. Lin Feng looked up at Miao Shihao. "Fellow Taoist, what do you mean? Could it be that you don't want the heavenly true water anymore?" Miao Shihao rolled her eyes at him coquettishly. "Of course I want the heavenly true water. However, I'll use something else to exchange with you. If you want talisman money, you can also name a price." The so-called talisman money was a type of currency in the cultivation world set by the Heavenly Trade Pavilion. It was rather widespread in the western part of the Great Qin dynasty and among the foreign races in the vast desert. It was basically accepted as a transaction currency by all forces. Talisman money was actually talisman charms. Talisman charms made by cultivators of different cultivation levels were converted into different currencies according to their power level. Talisman charms made by Qi refinement cultivators were usually called Qi talismans. Under normal circumstances, Only talismans made by cultivators at the peak of Qi refinement level 12 were considered real Qi talismans. They could be exchanged with talismans of higher levels. There were 3 realms of foundation establishment. The talismans made by cultivators were called sea talismans, platform talismans, and cauldron talismans. The 3 realms of golden elixir period were usually referred to by the quality of golden elixir. From low to high, they were yellow talismans, green talismans, and vermilion talismans. The highest grade of talismans used as currency at present was the purple talisman, also known as origin talisman, refined by early Yuaniing cultivators. Qi talismans, sea talismans, platform talismans, cauldron talismans, yellow talismans, green talismans, vermilion talismans, and origin talismans. There were a total of 8 grades. From low to high, the exchange rate between 2 kinds of talisman money was 10 times. In other words, 1 sea talisman was equivalent to 10 Qi talismans. 1 platform talisman was equivalent to 10 sea talismans, which was equivalent to 100 Qi talismans, and so on. The only exception was origin talismans. Because they were powerful and extremely rare, 1 origin talisman was equivalent to 100 vermilion talismans. Miao Shihao looked at Lin Feng and said, "Brother Shihao, I've accumulated some savings over the years. As long as your price isn't too outrageous, I can satisfy it. I definitely won't haggle. Or do you want something else?" Lin Feng muttered to himself, "Fellow Taoist, you seem to have a deep understanding of Taishu Temple?" Perhaps it wasn't just a deep understanding. This Miao Shihao was actually able to find out from inside Taishu Temple that Cherngang had gone missing. Clearly, his control over Taishu Temple's intelligence was very strong. Sure enough, Miao Shihao curled his lip. That group of uncouth people. I don't dare to say anything about their sect, but as long as it's someone who has entered the world, I, Brother Shihao, know it like the back of my hand. His eyes suddenly lit up and he looked at Lin Feng. "Sir, could it be that?" Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. "It's not what you think. Although I won't let Taishu Temple bully me, the #1 holy land in the world, if they don't provoke me, I don't have the mood to provoke them. The reason I'm inquiring about this information is actually more out of curiosity." Hearing this, Miao Shihao instantly wilted like a frosted eggplant. Forget it. I'll transfer my information channel to you, and you give me the Tiani True Water. What do you think? Lin Feng's palm moved, and the small porcelain bottle was already in front of Miao Shihao. Miao Shihao smiled and took it, then charmingly rolled his eyes at Lin Feng. "You really trust me?" The corner of Lin Feng's mouth twitched. He laughed dryly and said, "Fellow Taoist, you're a straightforward person, but I'm not stingy either." Miao Shihao nodded with satisfaction. "I like you more and more. How about this, in a few days, the vast Sea Grand Assembly will officially start. If you have something you want to bid for in the Sky Auction House and don't have enough money, you can come to me. I'll help you make up the difference, and you can bid without worry." Lin Feng automatically filtered out the first part of his sentence, but his mind was on the second part. Leveling up, killing monsters, picking up treasures, the Cave Academy's auction. Is this brother also going to welcome the legendary auction? A brand new idea suddenly popped up in Lin Feng's mind. Wait, the auction, perhaps this is an opportunity for me? Lin Feng kept calculating in his mind. The props are here, and I, the director and lead actor, is also in place. Now I'm still missing some other actors. After finishing his calculations, Lin Feng habitually put on a warm smile like the spring sun on his face. He turned to look at the little guy and the others, and said with a smile, "Master will stay here and chat with fellow Taoist Miao. You guys go out and have fun." After a pause, Lin Feng continued, "If anyone comes looking for trouble, Master has a request." The little guy and the others looked at each other and thought, "Master won't allow us to fight, will he?" Unexpectedly, Lin Feng said slowly, If anyone comes looking for trouble, remember, you can do anything, but you can't be at a disadvantage. Only you can take advantage of others. You can't be at a disadvantage. If you're bullied, don't come crying to master. The little guy and the others were slightly stunned, and then they all smiled. Xiao Yin chuckled and said, Master, don't worry. Looking at their figures leaving, Lin Feng smiled brightly. The script is written, and the props are ready. We're just waiting for the other actors to get in position. Chapter 184. Yu Hongyan looked at Xiao Yan and the other two leaving with a puzzled expression. He turned to look at Lin Feng. Senior, Lin Feng waved his hand, indicating that it was fine. He had left mana imprints on Xiao Yan and the others. As long as they didn't leave Sand Continent City, he could rush to their aid at any time if there was any danger at such a close distance. Miao Shihao looked interested. He covered his mouth and smiled. They're your disciples? They're all very extraordinary. Lin Feng could already selectively ignore many of Miao Shihao's sissy actions. Hearing that, he smiled indifferently. They're just a few good-for-nothing kids. I've made a fool of myself. Miao Shihao shook his head and clicked his tongue in wonder. Brother Shihao, I've never said nice things to compliment others. Your disciples are indeed extraordinary. When I was in Foundation establishment back then, I'm afraid I wasn't as strong as them. When they form their gold core or even nascent soul in the future, they should be the best among their peers. You flatter me, fellow Taoist. Lin Feng smiled faintly. After thinking for a while, he asked, Is the vast ocean Dharma assembly only used to trade treasures? Miao Shihao stretched one of his hands into the air. His 5 slender, white, and jade-like fingers spread open. He raised his head and examined his fingers as he said indifferently, It's not only used to trade treasures. After the Dharma assembly officially starts, there will be many Tao techniques and spells that will be spread. He lowered his head and looked at Lin Feng with a smile. However, most of the things that people privately exchange during the Dharma assembly are incomplete. There aren't many valuable things. The truly good things can only be found in the official auction held by the Heavenly Trade Pavilion. Lin Feng asked silently, What are the requirements to participate in the auction? Minimum golden elixir period cultivation. You must have at least 1 treasure to participate in the auction. At the same time, you must have a person who participated in the Dharma assembly as a guarantor. If you fulfill these 3 requirements, you can receive an invitation. Miao Shihao continued, The guarantor can only vouch for 1 person at a time. Those who are invited can only bring 2 companions into the venue. Lin Feng nodded and looked at Miao Shihao with a smile. In that case, I'm afraid I'll need you to vouch for me. Miao Shihao laughed tenderly. It's just a small matter. Since you're interested, even if you don't say it, I'll still be your guarantor. While they were chatting, Lin Feng's heart suddenly moved. It's Xiao Budian? This feeling, did he go into the array that was set up by others? Thinking that the people of the Yu clan could possibly be in Sand Continent City, Lin Feng was still a little worried and stood up. Before the auction officially starts, I will come here to look for Tao Friend. At that time, I hope that Tao Friend can vouch for me. Miao Shihao was a little reluctant. You're leaving just like that? Lin Feng shuddered and felt that he couldn't take it anymore. He laughed dryly. One of my disciples seems to have gotten into some trouble. I'll go take a look. Miao Shihao covered her lips and laughed tenderly. You say that your disciples shouldn't come back to look for you if they suffer, but in your heart you still care about them. We'll part here. Tao Friend, please don't see me out. Lin Feng turned and walked out. Yu Hongyan bowed to Miao Shihao and followed closely behind Lin Feng. Lin Feng pushed open the door of the quiet room and prepared to leave. Suddenly, a fragrant wind came from his side and he saw Miao Shihao following him. Miao Shihao's handsome face was filled with a curious smile. I also like those few disciples of yours, so I came to see what surprises they can give me. You won't mind if I follow you, right? Lin Feng laughed. Dao friend, you must see me make a fool of myself. Miao Shihao rolled his eyes at him coquettishly. Look at what you're saying. How could I bear to? Lin Feng's mouth twitched, and he resisted the urge to smash his high nose bridge with a punch. He did not speak, but turned and walked out first. This clown, if he wanted to follow, then let him. The few of them left the shop. Lin Feng sensed for a moment, and then headed to the west of the Sand Continent city, arriving in front of a large residence. The house looks ordinary, but Lin Feng can faintly feel a sharp aura coming towards him from within, showing off its edge, but also carefully hiding it. It felt like he was facing a sharp sword that could be unsheathed at any time. Someone has set up a spirit formation here, and it's a powerful sword formation. Lin Feng carefully analyzed, a kind of sword Dao that bravely advances, treads on the sky, and sings loudly all the way to the 9 heavens. The sword intent within communicates with the 9 heavens, heaven and earth as one. I remember now, this should be the sword Dao of the Heavenly Sword Sect. The Heavenly Sword Sect, along with the Mount Shu Sword Sect, the Celestial Sword Sect, the Blaze Sword Sect, and the Wilderness Sword Sect, were all part of the 9 Heaven Sword Alliance. Their strength was even above the Celestial Sword Sect, the Blaze Sword Sect, and the Wilderness Sword Sect. In the 9 Heavens Sword Alliance, the Heavenly Sword Sect sat firmly in second place. The profoundness of their sword Dao, the number of experts, and the enormity of their power, were all second only to the Mount Shu Sword Sect. Miao Shihao looked at the sword formation set up in the residence in front of him, and his face also revealed a confused expression. Why is the Heavenly Sword Sect's heaven-treading stairs sword formation here? The Heavenly Sword Sect has a special foothold in the Sand Continent city, but that's in the north of the city. Lin Feng's gaze flashed. Looks like it's someone's private residence. Without going in, Lin Feng raised his hand and drew a circle of light in the air. The image within the circle of light changed, and instantly the figure of the little guy appeared. The little guy was sneaky, like a fish swimming through the heavy sword formation. From time to time, rays of sword chi and sword aura would shoot out, as if forming a death net, blocking the little guy's path. The little guy did not fight it head-on, and stopped every 3 steps with his fingers. He actually constantly calculated the changing patterns of the sword formation, and moved unimpeded within the formation. What was even more amazing was that he did not use force to break the formation, and would not alarm the person who set up the formation. Lin Feng, Miao Shihao, and Yu Hongyan all looked curiously at the little guy, not knowing what he was planning in that little head of his. Amidst the dense sword chi, the little guy had already passed through the outer sword formation, and arrived at the main house of the residence. Here, the little guy's speed clearly slowed down. He calculated for a long time, and his little face immediately wrinkled into the shape of a bun. I can't calculate it, forget it. The little guy curled his lips and brought his palms together. The power of wind and thunder accumulated, and directly blew away the sword chi in front of him. This time, it completely alarmed the sword formation, and countless rays of sword chi formed a flight of stairs in front of the little guy. However, every step of this flight of stairs was formed by countless rays of sword chi, and the higher it went, the more condensed the sword chi became, forming rays of sword aura. And at the top of the flight of stairs, cold light flickered, and the condensed sword aura was like a real flying sword, sharp and powerful. The little guy smiled, stepped on the wind and thunder, and climbed up the flight of stairs to the heavens. Outside the sword formation, Lin Feng and Miao Shihao looked at each other, and suddenly understood. So the person who set up the formation is not in the formation. The little guy made such a big movement, but the other party did not have the slightest reaction, and only the sword formation reacted automatically. Obviously, the person who set up the formation was not in the house, and went out. Lin Feng felt strange. Could it be that the little guy found something strange about this house? He watched patiently, and saw the little guy walking as if he was flying, quickly climbing up the stairs of Sword Chi. Every step that he stepped on immediately looked like it had been trampled by an ancient beast, and was broken. At the top of the flight of stairs formed by the sword aura, the magic power was even more condensed, and the attack power was also stronger. The wind and thunder surged in the little guy's hands, and his power also became stronger and stronger. The storm and thunder interweaved together, and without waiting for his steps, he first bombarded the sword aura stairs, and immediately shattered the sword aura. A formation formed by a golden elixir period cultivator, so strong. The little guy's forehead was also covered in sweat, and he was panting, and his face was bright red. He did not stop, and instead rushed up the stairs formed by the sword aura at the top in one go. As soon as he stepped on the stairs, several ferocious sword auras rushed towards him. Among them, the heaven and earth were connected, and the sword intent that stepped on the sky was peerlessly fierce. However, after the previous preparation, the power of the little guy's unlimited wind and thunder magic had already risen to a whole new level, and the power was not the slightest bit weaker than the full power of a golden elixir period cultivator. For the current little guy, this kind of power was already on the verge of losing control. However, the little fellow had a very good grasp of the situation. It stopped the growth of the unlimited power of wind and thunder at the critical point that it could control. Then, it manipulated the majestic power of wind and thunder to meet the sword light that was activated by the sword formation. Within the violent shaking, the wind and thunder disappeared like smoke, and the sword aura was also smashed into pieces. The little guy laughed, and in a flash, he had already stepped over the last step. When he reached the top step, he did not arrive at the roof of the main house, but instead stepped into a secret room under the main house. The secret room was empty, and there were no furnishings. There was only a stalk of spirit grass planted on the ground in the middle of the secret room. That spirit grass was over a meter tall, and its slender stem and leaves were like bamboo joints. It was divided into 8 sections, and each section grew taller bit by bit. Its entire body was a deep blue color. Separated by the formation, Lin Feng could feel the astonishing medicinal power contained within. It was unexpectedly the same as the heavenly sword sect's sword Dao, as if it was connected to the mysterious concept of the 9 heavens. Beside him, Miao Shihao cried out in surprise, "Rank 9 heaven-reaching grass? This thing is not commonly seen. It is only found in the heavenly sword sect's blessed land, Heavenly Mountain." Rank 9 heaven-reaching grass? The moment Miao Shihao said the name, Lin Feng immediately knew that this stalk of spirit grass was the secret medicine of the heavenly sword sect, the main ingredient of the heaven-reaching pill. The heaven-reaching pill had the same effect as the 33 days fortune immortal pill in Lin Feng's system. Both could raise the cultivation level of the user, but the medicinal effects were not as domineering as the 33 days fortune immortal pill. The heaven-reaching pill raised the cultivation level of a cultivator, but there was a certain chance of failure. Even so, it was definitely one of the few miraculous medicines in the entire heaven primal world. To a certain extent, it had established the heavenly sword sect's strong position in the divine land. The rank 9 heaven-reaching grass in front of him only had 8 sections, and it was clearly not fully mature. But the little guy did not care so much. Although he was the only one in the secret room, he still looked around furtively. Then he grabbed the rank 9 heaven-reaching grass and plucked it out of the ground. Yu Hongyan looked at this scene in a daze, and then looked hesitantly at Lin Feng. "Senior Tianhao, he." The corner of Lin Feng's mouth twitched and he did not answer. Miao Shihao could not stop giggling. What else could it be? Stealing other people's spiritual medicine. More accurately speaking, it is no longer stealing, but openly robbing. Barging through other people's sword formation, directly robbing them. I'm dying of laughter. This kid is interesting, I like him. He suits Brother Shihao's taste. Lin Feng looked at the little guy expressionlessly, wailing in his heart. Disciple, disciple, we are upright people. Your image has been completely ruined. Chapter 185. The little guy plucked the level 9 heaven-piercing grass and used his fingers to poke at the bamboo-like slender stem and leaf. He smiled. Just as that person said, it's a rare treasure. His large eyes darted around. Oh, I have to leave quickly. Otherwise, that person will come back. With that, the little guy slipped out of the house and disappeared into the crowd on the street. Lin Feng looked at his back speechlessly. Seeing Miao Shihao look over, he coughed. Ahem, I've made a fool of myself. Miao Shihao smiled. You're too kind. I like this little guy a lot. Lin Feng laughed dryly. My dear disciple, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse for you to be admired by such a sissy. Lin Feng was busy dealing with Miao Shihao when he suddenly thought of something. He looked into the distance. There, a group of people was walking towards the house. Looking at the posture of the person leading the way, it was obvious that the owner of the house had returned. This person was dressed in green with a blue silk sash around his waist. A long sword hung from it. Above his head was a pillar of sword light that reached the sky. It was as if a heavenly gate had been opened and spiritual energy from the heavenly realm was being drawn to the mortal world. Such characteristics were the characteristics of the cultivators of the Heavenly Sword sect. Moreover, he was a Heavenly Sword sect cultivator who had formed the Golden Elixir. Behind him were more than 10 people dressed in different clothes. Their cultivations varied, but most of them were like unsheathed swords, full of killing intent. Among them, there were 4 elders whose auras were condensed. They were like sharp swords in their scabbards. When needed, they would explode. They were much more terrifying than those who exposed their auras. Their auras were always exposed. In fact, their essence energy was scattered. It was easily eroded by the wind and rain of the outside world. One day, it would lose its sharpness and decay. And these 4 elders were all cultivators of the Golden Elixir period. They could already lock their magic power and sword chi. Only in battle would they explode with dazzling brilliance. Usually they hid their auras. When they were truly unsheathed, their sword intent and killing intent were even fiercer. All of these people had one thing in common. They were equipped with long swords. Regardless of whether they were hung at their waists or carried on their backs, their long swords all looked exactly the same, as if they were produced on an assembly line. The scabbard was engraved with a simple and heavy engraving of mountains and rivers, which was the symbol of the Mount Shu sword sect. These sword cultivators were all Shushan cultivators. The Heavenly Sword sect cultivator led the way and smiled. I've moved the level 9 heaven-reaching grass into the secret chamber. It will take some time for it to fully mature. Seniors, please stay in my humble abode for a few days. The conclave is over. The spiritual herb should be fully grown by now. The leader of the 4 old men from Mount Shu sword sect stroked his long beard and nodded in satisfaction. Fellow Taoist Fu Shua, thank you for your hard work. The heavenly sword cultivator named Fu Shua laughed. I'm going to join Shushan, so I can't possibly come empty-handed. But when the time comes, I hope that Elder True White will put in a good word for me. His words were too blunt, and the Shushan sword cultivators all curled their lips. But they were still very satisfied. After all, they had obtained the most precious spiritual herb of the Heavenly Sword sect. It was a considerable gain. The 4 Golden Elixir period elders looked at each other, satisfied smiles on their faces. The Heavenly Sword sect's strength has soared in recent years, and their actions have become more and more unbridled. They even tried to challenge our position as the #1 Holy Land of the Sword. It's time to take them down a notch, and let them know that the might of Shushan is not to be trifled with. Elder True White stroked his long beard, thinking, without the advantage of the level 9 heaven-reaching grass and the heavenly reaching pill, the Heavenly Sword sect will not be able to make any big waves. The Shushan sword sect had also coveted the level 9 heaven-reaching grass for a long time. They had plotted in secret, and were just short of openly asking for it. The heavenly sword sect had naturally guarded against it. Even if there had been people who had defected to Shushan, no one had been able to bring a single leaf of the level 9 heaven-reaching grass out of the heavenly sword sect. But this time, Fu Shua had successfully brought out an entire stalk of heaven-reaching grass. Although it was only a seedling, it had attracted the attention of Shushan. Thinking of this, Elder True White decided to speak frankly. You can rest assured. I will put in a good word for you in front of the old ancestor. This matter involves the level 9 heaven-reaching grass. Even the sect leader might make an exception to meet you. Hearing this, Fu Shua's face lit up, but he managed to keep his composure. He nodded, smiling as he gestured with his hand. For elders, please. I will bring you to see the level 9 heaven-reaching grass. Halfway through his words, Fu Shua suddenly froze. He sensed carefully, and his back broke out in a cold sweat. He had already sensed that the heaven-treading stairway sword formation that he had set up in his house for protection had been broken. Calm down, calm down. Fu Shua bit his tongue, forcing himself to calm down. Although he was burning with anxiety, he did not show it in front of the Shushan sword sect cultivators. He still held a glimmer of hope in his heart. Perhaps the other party had not discovered the level 9 heaven-reaching grass he had hidden in the secret room. In fact, apart from the level 9 heaven-reaching grass, Fu Shua had also left other talismans, spiritual medicines, and other treasures in the house. Fu Shua was now begging heaven and earth, hoping that the other party had only taken away the other things in the house. It did not matter if these things were lost, but the key was that the level 9 heaven-reaching grass must not be lost. In particular, this spiritual grass still needed a few days to mature. If it was pulled out now, all the previous efforts would be in vain. Everyone, please follow me. Fu Shua felt uneasy in his heart, but he still looked calm on the surface. He took the lead with great bearing and led everyone into the house. However, the nervous Mr. Fu Shua did not notice that he was actually walking with a limp. After entering the main house of the big house, they went straight to the secret room. As soon as he opened the door, Fu Shua's vision darkened, and he almost fainted. In the empty secret room, there was a big pit on the ground. The level 9 heaven-reaching grass had disappeared. It had been dug out by someone, including the stem and leaves. Elder Real White and the other Shushan sword cultivators who came in behind Fu Shua saw this scene, and their faces all darkened. Elder Real White frowned and asked, "Fellow cultivator Fu Shua, what's going on? Some goddamn bastard dug out the spiritual grass by the roots while I was away." At this moment, Fu Shua's face was ferocious, and his whole body was in a state of frenzy. The sword chi all over his body surged uncontrollably, forcing several Shushan sword cultivators in the building foundation stage with lower cultivation to retreat. Although he had a vague premonition, Fu Shua was still hysterical at this moment. His eyes were bloodshot, and he could not wait to skin the person who had stolen the spiritual grass. He had defected from the Heavenly Sword sect and joined Shushan. For the Heavenly Sword sect, he had already committed a crime punishable by death. Originally, his sect would definitely want to kill him. If he wanted to live, he could only rely on the protection of the Shushan sword sect. But if he lost the level 9 heaven-reaching grass as a stepping stone for his advancement, the Shushan sword sect might not spare no effort to protect him. Although Shushan and the Heavenly Sword sect were always dirty in private, they were still members of the Nine Heavens Sword Union in name, and the Shushan Sword sect was the leader of the union. No matter what, it could not be justified to shelter a defected disciple of an allied sect. Only the level 9 heaven-reaching grass could make the Shushan Sword sect spare no effort to protect him. Now that the heaven-reaching grass was gone, the shadow of death suddenly floated over Fu Shua's heart, making him almost unable to breathe. The spiritual qi in the soil has not dissipated completely. The person who stole the spiritual grass must not have gone far. After him, we still have a chance to get it back. Fu Shua roared angrily. He did not even have time to call out to Elder Real White and the others. His whole body turned into a sword light and soared into the sky, directly piercing through the secret room and the roof of the mansion. Elder Real White and the other Shushan sword cultivators looked at each other and nodded. Fu Shua had already committed suicide in the Heavenly Sword sect. If he dared to play tricks on Shushan again, no one in the world could protect him. Looks like someone really took advantage of the loophole and stole the spiritual grass. Elder Real White said in a deep voice, "The level 9 heaven-reaching grass is very important. We must also chase after it. We must find the spiritual grass. This spiritual grass is already the property of our Shushan. The person who stole it must pay the price in blood." More than 10 sword lights soared into the sky and chased after Fu Shua. The little guy walked on the street and was happily calculating, I can bring it back to master. However, there are a total of 8 sections. Should I eat one first? As he was thinking, the little guy suddenly felt a threatening, killing intent behind him. He looked back and saw a green sword light that seemed to pierce through the sky. It cut through the clouds and flew towards him. A middle-aged man in a green robe stood on the sword light. It was Fu Shua. With a sweep of his magic power, he discovered the spiritual grass on the little guy's body. He immediately scolded, "Little bastard, put the spiritual grass down." The little guy stuck out his tongue and stepped on wind and thunder. His speed instantly increased and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Fu Shua was seething with anger and roared, "Heaven-reaching sword escape." His entire body soared into the sky and combined with his own sword light in midair. Using his body to control the sword, he transformed into an extremely bright green light and pierced down from the sky. Fu Shua's heaven-reaching sword escape was extremely fast like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he had already caught up to the little guy. The little guy turned his head to look at the sword light and said with dissatisfaction, "You are so unreasonable. Spiritual grass is meant to be eaten. You are too stingy." These bold and confident words almost choked Fu Shua to the point of vomiting blood. He was almost separated from the sword light. "I'll let you eat it." Fu Shua's eyes were blood-red. He exerted even more strength in his hand. The destructive power of an initial stage golden elixir sword cultivator was displayed to the extreme. He wanted to nail the little guy to the ground with one strike. "You dare to steal my spiritual grass. Even dying 10,000 times is not enough." The little guy heard this and laughed. He flipped his small palm and revealed a golden disc. The golden plate shone brightly, and suddenly, a ferocious tiger with a platinum glow darted out from it. It let out an earth-shaking roar, and countless strong gusts of wind, which were as sharp as steel blades, cut Fu Shua's sword light into pieces. The platinum tiger's bell-like eyes looked at Fu Shua. Its powerful aura made his whole body weak. Golden elixir peak? Fu Shua's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The huge tiger swung its huge claws as if it was swatting a fly. It directly sent Fu Shua, who was one with the sword, flying. Chapter 186. Golden Elixir Initial Stage Heaven Connecting Sword Cultivator Fu Shua came in a hurry and left in a hurry. He arrived in front of the little guy like a flash of lightning, and then was sent flying with an even faster momentum than when he came. At this moment, Fu Shua felt as if thousands of ancient vicious beasts were madly galloping in his heart. He never thought that this medicine thief, who seemed to be only at the middle stage of foundation establishment, actually had a peak golden elixir tiger soul essence in his hand. What made it even more difficult for Fu Shua to bear was the little guy's laughter. Unreasonable people should be taught a lesson. Fuck, who was unreasonable in the end. Fu Shuo, who was still in the air, was so angry that his eyes turned black and he saw stars. He wanted to open his mouth to curse back, but his nose suddenly hurt and he ate a mouthful of sand. Turned out that at this moment, he just happened to fall on the ground, and unfortunately, he hit the ground face first. More than 10 sword lights in the sky, some fast and some slow, followed Fu Shuo to the scene. Everyone was dumbstruck as they looked at the scene in front of them. They never thought that in just a few seconds, Fu Shuo, who was a step ahead, had already been beaten to the ground. Elder True White and the other 4 Shushan Golden Elixir period sword cultivators looked at each other. True White took a step forward and looked down at the little guy. "Kid, did you steal the 9th stage heaven connecting grass?" The little guy's eyes rolled. "I don't know what you're talking about." He glanced at Fu Shuo, who was lying on the ground, and curled his lips. "This person's brain is sick and unreasonable. He attacked me as soon as he came up, so I taught him a lesson." What a crafty kid. Elder True White was so angry that he laughed. "Looks like I'll have to let you suffer a bit first." He patted the scabbard at his waist, and a sword light flew out, targeting the little guy. The little guy's mind moved and the tiger soul essence angrily roared. It opened its big mouth and a door wide, tens of meters long golden light shot out. Gung Metal Destruction Demon Light. It was incomparably sharp and had the power to cut through everything. It was even better than Elder True White's sword light. Elder White Real smiled. Although it is the power of the peak of the golden elixir, it is, after all, a spiritual essence without intelligence. It has power but is unable to use it freely. How can it compare to our Shu Mountain's supreme sword path? He made a sword incantation gesture with his finger, and the sword light he released suddenly disappeared when it was about to touch the Gung Metal Destruction Demon Light of the Demon Tiger's soul essence. Without waiting for the little guy to react, the sword light that had originally disappeared directly passed through the demonic tiger's soul essence that was guarding in front of him, and suddenly appeared out of thin air in front of him, almost within reach. At this moment, Xiao Budian could even clearly feel the cold sword intent, causing goosebumps to appear on his throat. "Stop him!" The little guy's mind spun like lightning. At the moment of imminent peril, the demon tiger's soul essence in front of him roared, and its originally casually drooping tiger tail suddenly stood up. It was like a steel whip as it fiercely lashed at True White Elder's sword light. Clang! Both sides collided with a metallic sound. The sword light was flung to the side by the tiger's tail. In midair, True White Elder frowned slightly. Is the Lesser Rule sword not powerful enough? The sword he used just now was one of Shu Mountain's 6 meridian swords, the Lesser Rule sword. Cutting through the void, turning the horizon into a very short distance, it could travel through space to kill the enemy. Shu Mountain's Lesser Rule sword was one of the few Heaven Primal World's Golden Elixir period cultivators could practice it. It was one of the powerful abilities that could travel through space. According to the level of a cultivator's cultivation and their understanding of the sword path, the distance they could travel through space also varied. At the same time, the sword path's attack power also varied. Among Shu Mountain's 6 meridian swords, the Lesser Rule sword was the most agile and the fastest, but correspondingly, its pure attack power was on the low side. True White Elder glanced at the demon tiger's soul essence again and frowned. He said to the other 3 golden elixir period Shu Mountain cultivators, "Let's attack together and quickly settle this. There are too many people here, and it won't be good if we drag this out." A short and stout Shu Mountain elder said unconcernedly, "So what if it's the Heavenly Trade Pavilion?" The tall elder beside him shook his head. "The Heavenly Sword Sect has already discovered that Fu Shuo stole the level 9 heaven-reaching grass and escaped. They will soon chase us here. It won't be good to shed all pretense of cordiality here." The short and stout elder laughed coldly. "What's not good about it? If the Heavenly Sword Sect dares to be noisy, we'll cripple them. I'd like to see if they have the guts to come up to Shu Mountain to talk nonsense. The elder, who had been silent all this time, who looked to be the oldest and was already getting on in years, said, "If the Heavenly Sword sect dares to talk nonsense, our Shu Mountain's 30,000 immortal swords will directly bury their heavenly mountain. But this is not up to you and me to decide. We need the sect leader and various elders to make arrangements. What we need to do is to get the level 9 heaven-reaching grass as soon as possible." True White Elder said, "That's it. Let's finish this quickly." The other three nodded. Their figures flashed, and they spread out. Together with True White Elder, they stood in 4 directions, surrounding Shao Budian and the spirit of the demon tiger in the center. True White Elder's left hand moved in front of his chest, and his right hand pointed towards the sky. A majestic sword chi enveloped his body, rushing upwards into the clouds and descending to the ground. It was like a pillar of chi that supported the vault of heaven. Within the sword chi, countless spatial fragments resonated with each other, sparkling and translucent. The other three also did the same. The short and stout elder revealed a cold smile. The sword chi that enveloped him was the thickest, flickering with cold light, intimidating one's soul. The power it revealed was the most ferocious and violent, as if it could destroy everything in the world. The Shaoshang sword was the most ferocious and tyrannical sword of Shu Mountain's 6 meridians sword. The oldest elder looked like he had 1 foot in the grave, but at this moment, his entire body was enveloped by a white mist-like sword chi. His spiritual power fluctuations were the most powerful and vigorous among the 4. Those white mist-like sword chi were faintly discernible, as if they did not have any strength. They constantly changed shape in the wind. However, knowledgeable people could recognize that this was the extreme Een sword of Shu Mountain's 6 meridians sword. The sword was like a mist, and did not have a fixed shape. However, this did not affect its valiant killing power in the slightest. Because its shape was not fixed, it was even harder to guard against. That tall elder expressionlessly looked down at the little guy on the street below. The sword chi he released was a pure gold color. It was not bright and ostentatious, but rather gentle and heavy. It was like a mountain that could calm the seas and hold up the heavens. In front of this golden pillar of chi, anyone would seem to be a head shorter. They would obediently kneel down, repent their sins, and peacefully await execution. The Shaoyang sword was the most neutral and gentle sword within Shu Mountain's 6 meridians sword. It was the most difficult to cultivate, but after cultivating it, it would be perfect and flawless. The benevolent were unequaled, and there was not the slightest flaw. It was publicly recognized as the head of the 6 swords. The 4 great golden elixir period elders of Shu Mountain acted together, giving the little guy enough face. The 4 pillars of sword chi were like pillars that supported the heavens in all 4 directions, incomparably imposing. What was even more frightening was that the 4 people's magic power gradually began to resonate. The vast and mighty sword light and sword chi linked together, forming a simple formation. Within the sword formation, all of the spiritual energy was expelled cleanly. Only the boundless sword chi remained, and the space around the little guy was actually sealed. This was the full preparation the 4 of them made in order to prevent the little guy from breaking through the void and escaping with a teleportation talisman. True White and the other 3 had considered every possibility. They were determined to obtain the 9th rank heaven connecting grass. Facing such a formation, the little guy's expression also became serious. However, he was not afraid. Instead, he patted the demonic tiger's soul essence in front of him. "Partner, please lend me a hand." The demonic tiger's soul essence growled, and its entire body shone with golden light. After going through Lin Feng's refinement, it no longer had its own thoughts, so it was fearless. It would only wholeheartedly listen to the golden disk's owner's orders. The little guy's 2 palms joined together, and surging lightning and whistling gales continuously interweaved and fused together. They mutually grew, and their strength became stronger and stronger. True White and the other 3 elders in the air saw this and couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. That tall elder seemed to cherish talent. To have such a cultivation at such a young age, your temperament can also be considered strong, and your courage is commendable. Forget it, as long as you hand over the 9th rank heaven connecting grass, this old man will act as your guarantor. Today's matter will not be investigated, and you will even be accepted into my Shu Mountain sect to learn the Tao. Are you willing? The little guy blinked his eyes and did not say anything. However, the endless wind and thunder techniques in his hands did not stop. That short and stout elder that cultivated the little Shang sword coldly snorted. You don't know what's good for you, brat. If you want to live, quickly hand over the 9th rank heaven connecting grass and surrender. Letting you enter my Shu Mountain sect is your good fortune. Don't be so ungrateful. The little guy curled his lips. Enough. If you have any other tricks, bring it on. When have my Xianmen Tianzong disciples ever been afraid? Xianmen Tianzong? The short and stout elder sneered. I've never even heard of this name before, yet you dare to mention it in front of me. Who knows which corner of the world you're from? He still wanted to say something, but his expression suddenly changed greatly. The space that was sealed by their sword chi suddenly split open with a large crack. The sword chi and magical power that were originally closely connected between the 4 of them were now separated by an invisible wall, and they were no longer able to communicate with each other. Their sword formation had been inexplicably broken. The sword chi scattered in all directions, and the sky was once again visible above their heads. The clouds suddenly separated to 2 sides, revealing 3 figures. One of them was a young girl wearing a fiery red outfit. She had scarlet hair and a red complexion, and her entire body seemed like a raging flame. The other was an abnormally handsome youth wearing a violet robe with golden edges. The corners of his eyes carried a smile, and his facial features were picturesque. It made his entire body lose all of its masculinity, and instead made him seem even more enchanting and charming than the red-clothed girl. This youth covered his lips and lightly laughed, but he did not look at the 4 people below him. Instead, half of his attention was placed on the person in front of him. They were naturally Yu Hongyan and Miao Shihao, and in front of them, there was a person who took the lead. His feet stepped on the void and he walked down from the clouds. It was precisely Lin Feng. The short and stout elder sternly shouted, "Who are you?" Lin Feng indifferently swept his eyes over him. "I am the master of the mysterious gate, Lin Feng. Perhaps you haven't heard of me? No matter, after today, my name and the name Xianmen Tianzong will be even more profound in your memory than the Shu Mountain sword sect." Chapter 187. After today, this name will definitely leave a deeper impression in your memory than the Shushan sword sect. Lin Feng's tone was light, as if he was talking about a small matter that was not worth mentioning. But in the ears of the Shushan sword cultivators, it was undoubtedly extremely piercing. The short and stout elder laughed coldly and said, "Your Excellency is boasting too shamelessly. Even Taishu Temple doesn't have the guts to boast in front of my Shushan." Lin Feng smiled slightly and didn't say anything more. Instead, he looked towards the other side of the sky. Miao Shihao, who was behind him, also did the same, with a faint smile on his face. In the distant horizon, the clouds suddenly dispersed, and an extremely cold aura came. It was bone-chilling and almost froze everyone present. An ice-blue cloud, carrying a group of people, descended from the sky and approached Lin Feng and the others. On the cloud, a group of people dressed in red, were the Red Mist sect cultivators who had previously clashed with Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan. In the middle of this group of red-clothed cultivators, there was a red-robed youth, who was staring at Yu Hongyan with a face full of resentment. But he didn't dare to make the slightest movement, and stood respectfully behind the group of white-clothed people. These white-clothed cultivators, in front of the Red Mist sect cultivators, clearly had a sense of superiority, and their cultivation realms were indeed higher than their red-clothed companions. Especially the white-clothed old man at the front. His terrifying spiritual power undulated, as if he wanted to tear the void apart. Impressively, he was a Yuanian great cultivator. That bone-chilling cold aura was emitted from his body. He didn't make any movements, and just stood there, causing the temperature of the entire Sand Continent City to drop by a large margin. Sand Continent City, which was located at the edge of the desert, was still unbearably hot, although it was already autumn, and this white-clothed old man slightly released his spiritual power aura, instantly causing the entire city to descend from the height of summer into the depths of winter. Lin Feng didn't even need to look to be able to guess that this person is definitely a nascent soul ancestor of the Yu clan. Moreover, the Tao technique that he cultivates should be the Yu clan's dark nether art that's been passed down directly. The red-robed youth stared at Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan, and said to the white-clothed old man, "Sixth great-uncle, it's these two who didn't stop after I announced the Yu clan's name. Instead, they fought even more fiercely." This white-clothed old man was called Yu Wanfeng, and had an extremely high status in the Yu clan. He was the sixth great-uncle of the current Yu clan patriarch, and the red-robed youth followed suit. Yu Wanfeng glanced at Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan, then turned his head to look at the red-robed young man and said coldly, "This is what you call a gigolo, a mortal, without any cultivation?" Just as the red-robed youth was about to speak, his eyes suddenly widened, and he couldn't make a sound. At this moment, he also saw Lin Feng standing in the air, purple chi rippling around him, and even lifting up the middle stage foundation establishment realm Yu Hongyan, who was originally unable to stand in the air. How could this be a mortal without any cultivation? To be able to stand in the air, that was an ability that only cultivators in the Golden Elixir period had at the very least. The red-robed youth was momentarily speechless, and his gaze towards Lin Feng was full of hidden bitterness. "Look at you, your spiritual power is clearly far above that beauty, but you didn't make a move, and didn't even say a word. You let that middle stage foundation establishment realm beauty fight against a dozen of us. Are you even a man?" Alright, although that middle stage foundation establishment realm beauty really had the ability to fight against a dozen of them, and even gain the upper hand by making a show of strength, and even beat them away. But the red-robed youth was still extremely resentful in his heart. "You're clearly a tiger, but you pretend to be a cat, causing me to lose face in front of sixth grand uncle. I spent so much to save up a good impression in the past, and now it's all gone." Although Yu Wanfeng was dissatisfied with the red-robed youth, he didn't care, and glanced sideways at Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan. "Red Haze sect is also considered a subordinate of my Yu clan. Since you dare to provoke my Yu clan, you'll have to pay the price." With that, Yu Wanfeng stretched out his hand and grabbed at the air. Endless cold air suddenly gathered together, transforming into a giant hand that grabbed towards Lin Feng and Yu Hongyan. "You delivered yourself to me," Lin Feng sneered in his heart. He could use this person to test the quality of a Yuanian cultivator. "You dare to touch my friend in front of me, how can it be so simple?" Miao Shihao, who was beside him, suddenly laughed delicately. "I haven't repaid you for giving me the Tiani true water, let me take care of this for you." As he spoke, his right hand formed an orchid shape, and he pointed at the giant hand made of cold air that Yu Wanfeng was grabbing towards him. In midair, a wave of light suddenly flashed, and numerous rays of light formed a perfect diamond shape in the air. The diamond shape flashed with a faint light, like a mirror without a frame, and it reflected Yu Wanfeng's giant hand of cold air. The surface of the mirror suddenly rippled like water, and from the surface of the mirror, a giant hand of cold air actually reached out. Its size, shape, strength of mana, and cold air were all exactly the same as Yu Wanfeng's giant hand of cold air. It was just like a real object, and the reflection in the mirror, but at this moment the reflection in the mirror turned from illusion to reality, and became a real object. Copy? No, it's a reflection, or rather, a reflection. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. The two identical giant hands of cold air clapped together, and with a loud bang there was a loud explosion, and the cold air filled the air, turning into a cloud of ice mist in the air. Supernatural state? Yuan Feng's expression changed, and he carefully looked at Miao Shihou's appearance, and blurted out, "Mirror flower perfected Lord Miao Shihou?" Miao Shihou smiled slightly, "That's me." Yuan Feng's expression was gloomy as he stared at Miao Shihou, and his tone was so cold that it was almost like ice shards. "Miao Shihou, this old man respects that it wasn't easy for you to obtain your cultivation. Now, turn around and leave, this old man will pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, with your cultivation of the early stage of yuanying, do you really think that you can withstand the anger of the Yu family? Don't end up dead when the time comes." Miao Shihou smiled indifferently, "So scary, it really scared me to death." With his hands behind his back, he looked up at the sky, and his vision was a little blurry, and his eyes seemed to be dreamy. A person's life is but an illusion. Even if one cultivates to achieve immortality, there will be a day when one's head will turn into nothing. You can escape death, but can you escape the extinction of the world? Since that's the case, what's there to fear about life and death? What's there to care about? Yuan Feng nodded slowly, his expression as dark as water. "All right, since that's the case, this old man will send you to reincarnation now." He put his palms together and made a hand seal, and an ice-blue ball of water suddenly appeared in front of him. Dense cold air emerged from the ball of water, and the surrounding temperature instantly dropped by a lot. Snowflakes actually floated in the sky. Lin Feng looked at the ball of water, and his pupils shrank slightly. Rather than saying it was water, it was more appropriate to call it ice. It was no longer liquid but solid like ice. One of the 6 great pure waters in the world, the extremely cold Xianming pure water. Yuan Feng's palms separated again, and the Xianming pure water in front of him suddenly expanded, sweeping towards Miao Shihou. In an instant, the world in front of him turned ice blue. This Xianming pure water could even freeze space. Being surrounded by it, Miao Shihou could not even break through space to escape. "That's why I, Brother Shihou, hate the cold." Miao Shihou sighed softly, his right hand still forming a orchid shape, and pointed at the Xianming pure water in front of him. A pure white flower appeared in front of the Xianming pure water. It had a total of 4 petals in the shape of a cross, and the pure white petals flashed with a pink splendor. When this delicate flower landed on the Xianming pure water, its petals suddenly scattered, and an extremely resplendent splendor spread out in front of everyone. An instant of beauty and an instant of eternity. From the moment the flower bloomed to the moment it fell, it was only a short moment. It was like a meteor streaking across the sky, but it bloomed with the most dazzling splendor. At this instant the ice-blue color of the Xianming pure water disappeared, and the entire sand continent city was filled with a pinkish-white light. The light came quickly and disappeared just as quickly. When the pinkish-white light dissipated, the flower had already disappeared, and along with it, Yuan Feng's aggressive Xianming pure water also disappeared. "A Dumbra!" Yuan Feng looked at Miao Shihou and said through gritted teeth. Miao Shihou smiled and didn't reply. She looked at the sky in the distance and said, "There are so many people here today." Lin Feng also looked into the distance. There, an extremely condensed sword aura broke through the sky and arrived in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the sword aura was already in front of everyone. The sword aura was only 3 feet long, but the brilliant sword intent it contained was 1,000 times more powerful than the sword array formed by White Reel and the other 3. That sword intent was like a path that led to the heavens. It overcame all difficulties and cut through brambles and thorns all the way up to the 9 heavens. When it arrived in front of Lin Feng and the others, the sword aura that was 3 feet long spread out and immediately turned into a path of clear light, spreading in the air. There was a group of people standing on the path of clear light. The person at the front looked like a middle-aged man. He was wearing an azure robe and the blue silk sash around his waist was fluttering in the wind. He was extremely charming. White Real and the others immediately turned pale when they saw the middle-aged man. Perfected cultivator Tatian, Yang Tonghui. Yang Tonghui arrived at the scene and didn't say anything. He reached out and grabbed Fu Shua, who was lying on the ground. Seeing Yang Tonghui, Fu Shua's body immediately trembled like a sieve. Master, where's the 9th grade heaven-reaching grass? Yang Tonghui didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. Fu Shua trembled and pointed at the tiny thing who was already standing behind Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled. Your disciple stole the spirit medicine and was going to give it to the sword sect. My disciple found out by chance, so he stole the spirit medicine. It's time to return it to its rightful owner. He turned around and looked at the tiny thing. Although the tiny thing didn't want to, he didn't dare to act like a spoiled child in front of his master. He had no choice but to give the 9th grade heaven-reaching grass to Qin Fan. The tiny thing's heart was bleeding. I should have eaten some of it first. Yang Tonghui took the 9th grade heaven-reaching grass and was obviously relieved. Thank you, my friend. May I know your name? Lin Feng smiled and said, I'm the master of the Xian sect, Lin Feng. Yang Tonghui nodded. I'll greet you later. He turned to look at White Real and the others, and his brows immediately furrowed. White Real felt bitter. He cupped his fists and said, Perfected cultivator Tatian, please understand. We've only just learned about this. We're both members of the 9 Heavenly Sword Alliance. How could Mount Shu allow a disciple who betrayed an ally to stay? Yang Tonghui nodded and said indifferently, That's great. White Real and the others could only grit their teeth and swallow it down. In the Sand Continent City, they were already the people with the highest cultivation in Mount Shu Sword Sect. Even if they wanted to settle the score, they had to first contact the sect's Yuanying stage ancestors. Let's go. White Real and the others exchanged glances and were about to leave. As for Fu Shua, his master had caught him in the act, so he had to give up. Once they turned around, Lin Feng's voice came from behind. Do you think you can leave after bullying my disciple? Chapter 188. You bullied my disciple, and you want to leave just like that? Lin Feng looked calmly at White Real and the others below. The pudgy elder sneered. You want to keep us here? There are tens of thousands of sword cultivators in Shushan. 1 sword for each of us, and you will be reduced to dregs. Lin Feng was not angry when he heard this. He smiled slightly, stretched out his right hand and spread his fingers. Surging purple qi suddenly spewed out from Lin Feng's right hand, enveloping White Real and the other Shushan sword cultivators. How dare you! White Real and the others shouted angrily. They all struck out with their swords, trying to break through Lin Feng's purple qi. But the purple qi formed an independent space, completely isolating them from the real world outside. The Shushan sword cultivators were in a trance. The next moment they found that the sky above their heads, the clouds, the ground under their feet, and the flowing water were all purple. It was as if they were in a whole new world. In the distant sky, a purple sun was slowly rising, sprinkling purple sunlight on them. When it fell on them, it was even warm. White Real was shocked. He turned his head to look for his companions, but found that the others who had been around him had all disappeared. It was as if he was the only one left in the whole world. Not only White Real, but all the Shushan sword cultivators found themselves alone, trapped in a completely unknown purple world. In the real world outside, whether it was Yang Tonghui and the people of the Heavenly Sword sect behind him, or the Yu family disciples led by Yuanfeng, they all looked at Lin Feng in shock. Lin Feng stood calmly in the void. Below him was a purple ball of air in the shape of a cube. It was square and locked on the ground, trapping the people of Shushan sword sect inside. The interior of the purple cube was divided into independent small spaces, and each space contained a Shushan sword cultivator. Although they were looking in from the outside, Yang Tonghui, Yuanfeng, and the others could see that each independent small space was a separate world. Within the space, there were mountains, rivers, breezes, suns, moons, and everything else, forming a world of his own, creating all things. Who is this person? How can he use such a mystique? Yuanfeng was bewildered in his heart. Lin Feng's spell did not display any astonishing and vigorous mana. But his control of the mysteries of space and his understanding of the creation of all things made Yuanfeng, a veteran Yuanian cultivator, feel inferior. Yang Tonghui stared at Lin Feng, also lost in thought. The master of the Xianmen sect, Lin Feng. Looks like he's a rogue cultivator. He's been living in seclusion for a long time, but recently, he's thinking of making a move. He's preparing to establish his own sect and leave behind his legacy. Lin Feng looked at the independent space world constructed by the purple energy, also secretly nodding his head in his heart. As expected, this spell can only be truly perfected after I advance to the middle stage of Aurus Core. Small World of the Heavens, the fourth spell that Lin Feng comprehended from the 8 trigrams book of the Great Tao of the Heavens. Using one's own mana to isolate space, forming a world of its own and giving birth to all things. In this world, Lin Feng was the master. It was fine if the enemy was not sucked in. As long as they were trapped in the heavens' small world, even the Yuanian cultivators could only be at the mercy of Lin Feng. The primordial spirit ox and some of the Yuanian old monsters with powerful spiritual power could escape the suction of the heavens' small world. Even if they were trapped in the world, they could quickly break free. But this kind of ability was obviously not possessed by White Real and the others. Soon, they discovered something that made them even more frightened. How can my spiritual power be suppressed to the level of foundation establishment? The short and fat elder suddenly exclaimed. He discovered the changes in his body. In Lin Feng's heaven's small world, his spiritual power and cultivation level were all restricted to the foundation establishment. While the short and fat elder was bewildered, the world in front of him suddenly flashed, and a figure also entered this world. A child who was only around 10 years old was wearing purple clothes. His arms were bared as he chuckled at him. It was precisely the little guy. Lin Feng's voice sounded in the purple space. It was as mighty as the sky and everywhere. With my cultivation level and identity, it would seem that I am bullying you. But you have bullied my disciple, so you must be taught a lesson. I always talk about fairness. Just now, you were 4 against 1. With the cultivation level of golden elixir period, you bullied my disciple with the cultivation level of foundation establishment. Do you feel happy? Now that you are all in the foundation establishment stage, let's fight again. Let's see whether your Shu Mountain Sword Dao is sharp or my Xianmen Dao is profound. The short and fat elder trembled with anger. You dare to humiliate my Shu Mountain like this? Before he finished speaking, a strong wind blew in front of him. Xiao Budian had already come to his side and said with a smile, "Short man, what are you paying attention to?" Dodging a punch from Xiao Budian, the short and fat elder was so angry that his face turned red. This brat has a peak golden elixir tiger soul essence. How can I fight him? Xiao Budian said with a smile. So this is what you are afraid of? Don't worry, since you are also in the foundation establishment stage, I won't use the tiger soul golden plate. He looked up and down at the short and fat elder with a smile. If you are still afraid, I will let you make the first move. The short and fat elder was stunned. His face had already turned from red to green, but he was relieved. So what if we are in the same cultivation level? My Shu Mountain is the #1 sword Dao holy land in the world. I have practiced the sword for half of my life, and it is far better than your heretical methods." Thinking of this, the short and fat elder shouted, "Quick!" The long sword at his waist was unsheathed, and turned into an incomparably overbearing cold sword light, directly chopping towards Xiao Budian. The sword light was dazzling and cold. Every ray of light it emitted was an invincible sword aura. Shu Mountain's Xiao Shang sword. The short and stout elder looked at the 1-foot-long sword aura, but his heart was incomparably bitter. "I worked so hard to cultivate the 10 feet of cold sword aura, but now there's only 1 feet of cold left. Just who is this Lin Feng?" No matter how depressed his heart was, the short and fat elder still pulled himself together, and urged the Xiao Shang sword to chop towards Xiao Budian. The little guy laughed mischievously. He raised both of his hands, and the vigorous and tyrannical power of wind and lightning continuously circulated. It transformed into a whirlpool completely formed from wind and lightning, smashing towards the opponent's Xiao Shang sword. The short and fat elder's face instantly changed. Even if he was still in the golden elixir period, he still had to be careful in dealing with this limitless wind and thunder technique of the little guy. Now that his magic power had been suppressed to the foundation establishment stage by Lin Feng, he was simply not Xiao Budian's opponent. This was too unfair. This was the only thought in the short and fat elder's mind. He was clearly only at the middle foundation establishment stage, so how could he create an attack that could endanger a golden elixir period cultivator? The Xiao Shang sword was indeed tyrannical and incisive. Its edge was incomparably sharp, but right now it only had the strength of a zhang. Facing the little guy's limitless wind and thunder that was pushed to its limit, it was like a sharp, yet only 2 fingers wide and a few centimeters thick longsword directly colliding with a large iron hammer that weighed over 10 tons. The sword was indeed a peerless treasure sword. It could even cut apart the edge of the large hammer. But this did not change the huge difference between it and the large hammer. The final result had already been decided. The sword would be smashed into pieces by the large hammer. Outside the purple world, Yang Tongwei and Yu Wanfeng saw this scene, and their expressions became serious. When they looked at Lin Feng again, their gazes became much more serious. A world that was formed from heaven and earth could easily suppress the magic power of an enemy within the small world, but it could not be suppressed all the way. Instead, it was precisely controlled to the peak of the late foundation establishment stage, and was only a step away from forming the golden elixir. This kind of control showed that Lin Feng had almost absolute control over this independent small world that he had created. With such a divine ability, unless one's cultivation was much higher than Lin Feng's, once they were trapped in the small world, it would be very difficult for them to resist. The problem was that they could not see through Lin Feng's level of cultivation. The more unknown, the more terrifying it was. Yu Wanfeng stared closely at the short and fat elder of Shushan in the small world. Shushan was one of the 3 holy lands, and the Tao techniques that they passed down were definitely the best in the divine land. The Xiao Shang sword was also one of Shushan's signature divine abilities, the 6 meridian sword, and was even more famous for its fierce and tyrannical strength. Logically speaking, as a sword cultivator who was good at fighting and killing, the short and fat elder's battle strength should be very few among cultivators of the same level as him. At least, Yu Wanfeng asked himself, if he fought with a Shushan ancestor who was also at the early Yuanying stage like him, then he would most likely be at a disadvantage. And this was under the condition that he had cultivated the Xianming true water, and his strength far surpassed his peers. But even so, this short and fat elder had no room to fight back, and was defeated by the little guy. Even if his cultivation and magic power were suppressed, he was still at the peak of foundation establishment, and the little guy was only at the middle stage of foundation establishment. Just thinking about the gap between them made Yu Wanfeng's heart turn cold. At this moment, He looked at Lin Feng again, and his mood couldn't help but become even heavier. He turned around and fiercely glared at the red-robed youth who complained to him. The red-robed youth was staring blankly at Lin Feng, and his mind was in chaos. When he noticed Yuan Feng's gaze, it was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over his head in June, and he almost fell to the ground. Yuan Feng looked at Lin Feng, and his heart was at a loss. He wanted to say a few harsh words, but in the end, the words that came out of his mouth changed. "It's a misunderstanding, I've disturbed you." Finished speaking, he waved his hand, and the ice-blue cloud swept up the group of Yu family disciples and Red Mist sect cultivators, and instantly left. Lin Feng smiled in his heart. Very good, when it's time for the auction, there's another actor, and this one came to me crying and shouting to be in my big show. His expression did not change, and he calculated in his heart. It's about time to speak. Sure enough, Yang Tonghui looked at the people of Mount Shu's sword sect in the small world of the heavens, and after a moment of silence, he cupped his hands towards Lin Feng. "Lin, sect leader, they don't know the severity of the situation, and offended your disciple, so they should be punished, but I think they should also be taught a lesson, and I hope that you will be lenient." He paused, flipped his hand, and took out a porcelain bottle. "Here are 7 heaven-connecting pills, treat it as something for your disciple to calm down. I hope that sect leader Lin will be magnanimous and let them go." Lin Feng said in his heart, "I knew you would come out and be the good guy, and I was waiting for you. Even if you didn't speak, I would still be reluctant to give up these good actors." Chapter 189. If you don't say it, I can't bear to part with these good actors. Lin Feng smiled inwardly. He pointed with his finger and retracted the spiritual art of the lesser world. He said indifferently, "Shushan is unworthy of the leader of the 9 Heavens Sword League to allow their disciples to run amok like this." Yang Tonghui's eyes flashed. He had clearly captured the hidden message in Lin Feng's word. He was the leader of the 9 Heavens Sword League, not one of the 3 Holy Lands. It's hard to avoid the existence of withered leaves and branches. I believe that the seniors of Shushan will not allow anyone to run amok and ruin the sect's reputation, Yang Tonghui said with a smile, looking down at the people of Shushan below. White Real and the others had just escaped from the lesser worlds. They had been molested by Lin Feng, and even the most arrogant, stout elder had lost his spirit. Facing Yang Tonghui now, the prestige of their sect was no longer a psychological advantage. During the Golden Elixir period, they had the upper hand when facing the Yuanying ancestors. They dared not say anything in the face of Yang Tonghui's sarcasm. Lin Feng nodded and said to Yang Tonghui, "Since this matter is over, I will take my leave." Yang Tonghui asked, "Is sect leader Lin also here to participate in the vast Sea Dharma assembly?" "Yes." Lin Feng answered frankly. Yang Tonghui thought for a while and then said with a smile, "Will sect leader Lin also participate in the auction held by the Trade Pavilion in 3 days?" Lin Feng's thoughts spun like lightning, his mind constantly calculating. He suddenly thought that maybe he can borrow Yang Tonghui to make his plan even more perfect. Thinking of this, Lin Feng said with a smile, "This is my first time participating. I wonder if there are any requirements or restrictions for participating in the auction." Hearing this, Miao Shihao, who had been silent and seemed to be in a daze, finally came to his senses and looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng's eyes met his, but he said nothing. Miao Shihao pursed his lips and smiled. He lowered his head and said nothing. On the other side, Yang Tonghui smiled and introduced the requirements of the auction to Lin Feng. He knew that the 3 requirements were exactly the same as what Miao Shihao had said. Lin Feng pondered and said, "Introducer." Yang Tonghui turned to look at Miao Shihao. He felt that Miao Shihao was on the same side as Lin Feng. Miao Shihao smiled and said, "Don't look at me, perfected cultivator Tatian. Even though I'm with Sect Master Lin, unfortunately, I've already promised to introduce another friend to this auction. Yang Tongwei nodded and looked at Lin Feng with a smile. If Sect Master Lin doesn't mind, I can be your introducer. Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief. Fellow Taoist, you've done me a great favor by helping me. How could I possibly turn my back on you? Yang Tongwei smiled and shook his head, not saying a word. If you want to talk about help, it's Lin Feng who helped him a lot. Putting aside the matter of getting the 9th level heaven-reaching grass, Lin Feng was willing to let the cultivators of Mount Shu go for his sake, which was equivalent to humiliating the Mount Shu sword sect and boosting the reputation of the heavenly sword sect. In a sense, this favor was as useful as getting the 9th level heaven-reaching grass back. Even though Yang Tongwei had paid the price of 7 heaven-reaching pills, it was negligible compared to what he had gained. Lin Feng waved Xiao Budian and Yu Hongyan to his side and nodded at Yang Tongwei. Thank you, fellow cultivator. See you in 3 days. After saying goodbye to Yang Tongwei and the other cultivators of the Heavenly Sword sect, Lin Feng left with Xiao Budian and Yu Hongyan with Miao Shihao. When they were far away, Miao Shihao used his spiritual power to send a laugh. You, what tricks are you up to now? Lin Feng smiled. In his heart, he was still very grateful that Miao Shihao had cooperated with him in putting on a good show in front of Yang Tongwei. Just as he was about to speak, Miao Shihao suddenly shook his head like a drum. Wait, don't say it. His eyes shone brightly as he chuckled and said, There's no point in saying it out loud. Let me see what kind of tricks you're playing. You're really interesting. I didn't make a mistake following you. Lin Feng was speechless, and his mouth twitched. He really wanted to tell Miao Shihao that his last words were too ambiguous, but thinking that even if he said it, Miao Shihao would probably not take it to heart, Lin Feng could not help but laugh and shake his head. Miao Shihao insisted on going, and Lin Feng did not refuse. But for him to return to Miao Shihao's room, that was impossible. They found a place to stay in the Sand Continent City, and sent a message to Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi, telling them to hurry back and meet up. After the group settled down, Lin Feng chased Miao Shihao out of his room with an absolutely resolute and unyielding attitude, and then left Xiao Budian behind. Xiao Budian was looking at Lin Feng with a pitiful expression. Master! How could Lin Feng not know that this stinking brat could not bear to let the 9th heaven-connecting grass that was already in his mouth grow wings and fly away? Stop pretending. Do you think Master doesn't know you? Lin Feng was angry and amused at the same time. Xiao Budian's big black eyes turned, and a smile appeared on his face. Hee, Master, it's really a pity. Lin Feng laughed. Silly brat, then take it as an advance investment. We can earn back even more in the future. He flipped his palm, and took out the Heaven Flower 9-heart lotus. Moreover, I won't let you down. This thing belongs to you alone. Xiao Budian was overjoyed. He carefully looked at the green lotus in Lin Feng's hand, and felt the abundant spirit energy contained in the 9 lotus seed. And Xiao Budian's expression suddenly froze. Master, my spirit platform, without saying much, Xiao Budian immediately sat cross-legged on the ground. His hands formed seals, and he silently used the 8 trigrams Heaven's Great Way scripture. Lin Feng scanned with his divine sense, and found that within Xiao Budian's aura sea, the 6th spirit platform that had already gradually formed a foundation was rapidly rising from the ground. Powerful spirit energy lingered around, and the spirit platform was built layer by layer, rising high into the sky. Finally, it became a 9-story high spirit platform. Within Xiao Budian's body, there was a 6th first-grade spirit platform. Lin Feng nodded and said, Tianhao, concentrate, don't be distracted. He raised his palm, and the Heaven Flower 9-heart lotus flew into the air, and landed on top of Xiao Budian's head. The lotus's light shone brightly, and turned into a ray of 7-colored light. It entered Xiao Budian's body from the top of his head. Xiao Budian's body trembled, and then he calmed down. He guided the Heaven Flower 9 Heart Lotus's spirit energy essence into his own aura sea. Once the clear energy entered Xiao Budian's aura sea, it instantly separated, and 9 7-colored specks of light flew out. They were precisely the magic power essence of those 9 lotus seeds. These 9 7-colored specks of light temporarily floated above Xiao Budian's aura sea, and the clear energy was injected into it. Xiao Budian's aura sea immediately rippled with clear light, and began to roll, as if it was boiling. Then, he saw the 7th, 8th, and 9th spirit platforms also soar into the sky, and were cast into shape. Xiao Budian's entire body's magic power soared, and the 9 spirit platforms were all first grade. At the same time, the 9 first-grade spirit platforms that were originally arranged in a straight line within Xiao Budian's aura sea suddenly underwent a new change. Lin Feng's pupils slightly contracted, and he saw that the positions of the 9 spirit platforms within Xiao Budian's aura sea had also changed. The spirit platforms that were supposed to be fixed in place within Xiao Budian's aura sea actually began to move, forming 3 circles inside and outside. The outermost circle had 4 spirit platforms standing in the east, west, north, and south directions, while the middle circle had 4 spirit platforms standing in the southeast, southwest, northeast, and northwest directions. In the center of the innermost circle stood the last remaining spirit platform. Lin Feng, who had been paying close attention to the changes, immediately saw the clues. This shape is exactly the arrangement of the 9 lotus seeds on the Heaven Flower 9 Heart Lotus. Xiao Budian's 9 spirit platforms stood still, and above Xiao Budian's aura sea, the 9 7-colored specks of light formed by the lotus seeds also moved at this time. One by one, they landed on Xiao Budian's 9 spirit platforms. On each of Xiao Budian's spirit platforms, there was a shadow, and it was precisely the shadow of a pill cauldron. Xiao Budian's cultivation realm had always increased the fastest among all the disciples under Lin Feng's tutelage, and he had long activated his heaven's perception. If not for the changes happening within his body, and the need to erect 9 spirit platforms, he could actually condense the pill cauldron before Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi, and advance to the late stage of foundation establishment. Now that all 9 spirit platforms had been successfully constructed, he immediately stepped into the cauldron setting stage, and had to condense the pill cauldron as well. On the spirit platforms in Xiao Budian's aura sea, each pill cauldron shadow was matched with a lotus seed, and the shadow immediately became much more condensed. Condensing 9 pill cauldrons at once, even if I have enough transcendence energy, my mind will be extremely tired, and this is too tiring. Lin Feng took a look, and knew what to do. He extended a finger, and a strand of purple gas was injected into Xiao Budian's body. The more vigorous the transcendence energy, the easier it was to condense the pill cauldron. The faster the pill cauldron could be condensed, the less pressure on the mind. At this moment, Xiao Budian was completely focused on circulating his transcendence energy, and naturally guided the purple gas that Lin Feng sent over into his own aura sea. The strand of purple gas was divided into 9, and was evenly distributed to the 9 pill cauldrons. Within Xiao Budian's 9 spirit platforms, the majestic transcendence energy was completely injected into each pill cauldron shadow. Boom! Xiao Budian opened his eyes abruptly, and his eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor, and there were 9 vague spots of light flashing. At this moment, the 9 pill cauldron shadows in his body completely turned from illusory into reality, and they became 9 truly condensed 4-legged cauldrons. Xiao Budian stood up from the ground, and then turned towards Lin Feng and kowtowed, "Master." Lin Feng smiled as he helped him up, but he was thinking to himself, 9 first-grade pill cauldrons? He still hasn't recovered the elegance of a supreme being. Could it be that he wants to accumulate strength, and undergo a one-time transformation when he forms the golden elixir? It was normal for 9 pill cauldrons to be erected on 9 spirit platforms, but it was impossible for 9 pill cauldrons to form 9 golden elixir bead. When a foundation establishment cultivator formed their core, they had to condense all their transcendence energy into the golden elixir. Xiao Budian's core would definitely be formed with 9 pill cauldrons as one. After saying a few warm words of encouragement to Xiao Budian, Lin Feng sent him out, and Lin Feng sat alone in the room. After pondering for a while, he took out a ring from his clothes. When Lin Feng's divine sense entered the ring, he saw that the little Taotai, Tunten, was still in its cute Lolita form, sitting by itself in the light prison, bored to death. Upon seeing Lin Feng arrive, Tunten wrinkled its little nose and snorted. It turned its back, and acted as if it was unwilling to pay any attention to Lin Feng. It was a pity that Lin Feng had already felt her pulse a long time ago. One sentence made the little guy impatiently turn around. "True Sun Fire, do you still want it?" Tunten suddenly turned around and angrily shouted at the smiling Lin Feng, "You're too bad!" Chapter 190. You're so bad! Tunten yelled indignantly. Lin Feng secretly pursed his lips. No matter how bad she is, she's still better than you being so unreliable. A loli who can't forget to beat up her sweetheart and force herself on him. However, he naturally wouldn't get entangled with Tunten over such matters. He just smiled and said, "Do you still want the true Sunfire?" She swallowed and said eagerly, "Are you willing to give it to me?" "Of course." Lin Feng smiled like a fox preparing to steal a chicken. "It's not just the true Sunfire. I also have a way to help you rebuild your body and recover your strength." Tunten suddenly shivered, his face full of vigilance as he looked at Lin Feng. "What do you want?" Lin Feng smiled. "Nothing much. I've never said that I won't give you the true Sunfire, right? You didn't say anything, but you ran away without even looking back the last time." Tunten cursed inwardly while still looking warily at Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled. "The true Sunfire seed I had previously was modified. There's a limit to the increase in firepower. Even if I give it to you, you won't be able to use it. But now, I've found a way to increase the firepower of the true Sunfire. When I cultivate the real true Sunfire, I can naturally share some with you." Tunten asked curiously, "You have Shiha grass? This thing is almost extinct in Tianhuang vast mainland." Lin Feng sent a seed of Shiha grass in. Tunten didn't catch it with its hands. It opened its mouth and swallowed the seed. It smacked its lips. "It really is a seed of Shiha grass." She looked at Lin Feng in confusion. "Why are you suddenly so nice to me?" Lin Feng's smile was as warm as the sun in spring. "I've always been very nice to you. If you think I'm not nice, that's your illusion. Look at this." Lin Feng waved his sleeve, and a black figure landed outside the light prison. It was half of the Gung Metal Tiger King's corpse. Although it was already a broken corpse, it still shone with a dazzling metallic luster. It was filled with an indestructible power. In fact, if it wasn't for Lin Feng using the Two Realms Void technique to create the effect of cutting space, it wouldn't have been easy for him to split the tiger carcass into two. Tunten's gaze fell on the Gung Metal Tiger King's corpse, immediately unable to shift its eyes away. Saliva began to flow from its mouth as it said, "The remains of the Gung Metal Tiger clan? Furthermore, it's a Demon King-level Gung Metal Tiger." Although it was only half a corpse, Tunten believed that if he could devour it, he would be able to rebuild his body immediately. Although his strength would not be able to return to his peak, it should not be a problem for him to reach the peak of the Demon Commander stage, the peak Golden Elixir stage of the human race. The powerful innate abilities of the Taotai race made it so that even though she was a peak Demon Commander, she did not fear ordinary early Demon Kings or early Yuanying opponents. She couldn't do anything to him, and he couldn't kill her either. Lin Feng smiled and asked, "Do you like it?" Tunten's eyes widened as it repeatedly nodded. I like it, I like it, I like it, wait. She struggled to shift her gaze away from the remains of the gung-metal Tiger King. After a moment of hesitation, she said, You're really willing to give it to me? Aren't you afraid that I will take revenge on you after I recover my strength? Lin Feng looked at her with a faint smile. Do you think you have the ability? If it was your father, the Taotai saint, who said this, it would be more likely. Tunton unhappily patted the bars of the light prison. What? I was also a demon king that had formed a demon nascent soul at my peak. I was stronger than this dead tiger. That's right, that's right. Lin Feng nonchalantly nodded. Let's just say it, do you want it or not? Tunton blurted out, Of course I want it. Lin Feng smiled and put away the gung-metal Tiger King's remains. Tunton immediately became anxious. Are you kidding me? I will naturally give it to you, but not now. Lin Feng casually said, When the Shiha grass grows and I cultivate a large amount of sun's true fire, I will give this dead tiger and the sun's true fire to you. Just wait patiently. It won't take long. With that, Lin Feng's consciousness left the spatial ring, leaving Tunton hopping around anxiously. This move shouldn't be in vain. It's just that when it will be effective depends on how the opponent move. Lin Feng pondered. He pushed open the door and walked out. Helping Xiao Budian set up his spiritual platform and casting the cauldron took a lot of time. Today was the day the auction officially began. Let's begin. Let's split into two. Lin Feng snapped his fingers. The god of war clone appeared beside him and then disappeared. Lin Feng raised his head and looked into the distance. A sword light flashed and stopped in front of Lin Feng. 3 figures appeared. The one in the lead was Yang Tonghui. Behind him were 2 golden elixir period cultivators from the Heavenly Sword sect. Yang Tonghui saw Lin Feng and smiled. Sect leader Lin, are you ready? Lin Feng nodded. Thank you, fellow Taoists. With that, he called Xiao Budian and Yu Hongyan out and followed Yang Tonghui to the auction venue. Yang Tonghui's eyes flashed when he saw Xiao Budian. In just a few days, you're already in the late stage of foundation establishment? Could it be that you've long reached a bottleneck and the previous battle helped you break through? In front of Lin Feng, he naturally would not use his magic power to probe Xiao Budian's foundation. He could only see that Xiao Budian had formed a cauldron and advanced to the late stage of foundation establishment. If he knew that Xiao Budian actually had 9 spirit platforms and 9 cauldrons, his eyeballs would probably fall to the ground immediately. The group arrived at the center of Sand Continent City. Under Yang Tonghui's lead, they flew up into the sky. Lin Feng stared at the void above his head. So the Heavenly Trade Pavilion's auction venue is actually hidden in the void. That's quite a big deal. Sect leader Lin is indeed perceptive. Yang Tonghui nodded. The Heavenly Trade Pavilion's auction venue is actually a small grotto heaven that belongs to them. Usually, it's hidden in the void. It's only opened to the public once every year for the vast Ocean Dharma assembly. As he continued to fly upward, the void suddenly rippled like water, faintly revealing a colorful space. At the entrance of the void, a few cultivators appeared. The one in front had his clothes fluttering as if he was one with the void. He was a Yuanying cultivator. This person was obviously familiar with Yang Tonghui. The moment he saw him, he cupped his fists and said, Zhenjuan Yang, long time no see. How have you been? Yang Tonghui smiled. Mr. Song, long time no see. He introduced to Lin Feng. Sect leader Lin, this is Mr. Song Fu, one of the 3 managers of the Heavenly Trade Pavilion. Song Fu's eyes flashed as he looked at Lin Feng. Is this Taoist sect leader Lin? Lin Feng smiled in his heart. He checked the system. His current reputation in the northern foothills of the Kunlun Mountains has already reached 75, able to attract people in the area with a total potential talent value of 22 and above to take the initiative to come and take him as their master. Back then, Lin Feng's reputation in the southern region of the Great Hengduan mountain range had reached 70 because he killed the Gung Metal Tiger King, a great demon king. Although he didn't kill the Yuanian cultivators in the previous battle, he had humiliated the Mount Shu sword sect. The impact he had had was even greater than the Gung Metal Tiger King. Song Fu saw Lin Feng's appearance and heard Yang Tonghui's address. He immediately guessed his identity. Lin Feng smiled. "Mr. Song, I'm sorry to disturb you." "You're welcome." Song Fu smiled and shook his head. Yang Tonghui said, "This is sect leader Lin's first time attending an auction at the Heavenly Trade Pavilion. I'm his introducer." Song Fu smiled and said, "Sorry for the poor customs. Please come in." Lin Feng brought the little guy and Yu Hongyan into the small grotto heaven in the sky with Yang Tonghui and the others. The grotto heaven was like a vast galaxy with countless flashing light spots. Lin Feng looked carefully but realized he couldn't see through the light spots. "Is it covered by my Dharma power? I don't think my identity will be exposed if I attend the auction here." Lin Feng frowned. Then, an executive of the Heavenly Trade Pavilion came over and bowed to Yang Tonghui. "Greetings, perfected cultivator Tata. Your seat has been prepared." Yang Tonghui pointed at Lin Feng. "This is sect leader Lin. He's my guest." "Greetings, sect leader Lin." The deacon was well informed, and the recent happenings in the Sand Continent City, the Heavenly Trade Pavilion definitely had first-hand information. Towards the experts that had suddenly appeared in the city, they naturally had to be aware of them, and not inadvertently offend them. The executive said respectfully, "Since this is sect leader Lin's first time here, do you have any special requirements for your seat? Do you need to sit next to perfected cultivator Tata?" "Even though I can't detect it with my Dharma power, it seems that those who come here often have their own seats." Lin Feng smiled and looked at Yang Tonghui. "I'll have to trouble you for a while. I'll sit next to you." Yang Tonghui laughed and said, "Of course it's my wish, I don't dare to ask." The two laughed and flew to two flashing light spots under the guidance of the executive. The light spots had turned into a light ball the size of a mountain when they got closer. The executive took out his badge and the light went away, revealing what was inside. Lin Feng took a look and saw that they were two giant rocks, like two small planets in two cosmic starfield. Yang Tonghui brought the two Heavenly Sword sect cultivators and landed on one of the rocks. Lin Feng, Tiny Thing, and Yu Hongyan naturally landed on the other. There were already tables and chairs set up on the rocks, but other than that, it looked desolate. The executive smiled apologetically. "The environment is rough. Please forgive us, sect leader Lin." Lin Feng saw that Yang Tonghui's side was the same and knew that all the seats were the same. He didn't mind and smiled. "It's fine. I'm here to experience the grand occasion of the vast Ocean Dharma Assembly. A little superficial enjoyment is not important." After sitting down, Lin Feng looked around and saw that he was in a field of light spots. They formed a big ring and surrounded a black hole-like existence in the middle of the void. Yang Tonghui said through Dharma power, "The official auction will start in 2 hours. Before that, it's time for everyone to exchange Tao techniques and supernatural powers. Some treasures will also be traded here." Lin Feng nodded and calmed his heart to sense. He immediately sensed that countless spiritual wills were communicating in the starry sky of the Sea of Light. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.